Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to City Hall. Today is April 16th. No, today is April 23rd, 2024. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the Hayward City Council meeting. I'd like to adjourn the meeting. And madams, well, before we do the roll call, or convene the meeting. Did I say adjourn? I meant convene the meeting. Okay. I apologize. I convene the meeting. And Councilmember Syrup, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. And I was feeling a little guilty because I'm not wearing a jacket this evening, but Councilmember Syrup is not wearing a jacket, so I don't feel so out of place. Okay, Madam City Clerk, if you can take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Good evening. Councilmember Andrews.
Present.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.
Present.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Present.
Councilmember Roach. Here. Councilmember Syrup. Councilmember Cermeño.
Presente.
Mayor Salinas.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to closed session announcement, and Mr. City Attorney, if you can make a closed session announcement.
Mayor and Council, I will handle 2, 3, and 4, and then I will defer to you on number 1. The council did convene at 5:30 with all members present. 2, 3, and 4 deal with pending litigation involving a workers' compensation case. 3 deals with the issue of property transactions. 4 deals with labor negotiations. As to all of those matters, the council took no reportable action. Number 1 is the evaluation.
Item number 1 was the evaluation that the City Council does of our appointed officers. Today was the evaluation of the City Attorney, and Council took no action, but we did deliver the evaluation to the City Attorney. Thank you. With that, I'd like to close that item and move on to special presentations. We have a few special presentations today. And so what I like to do is I want to first start with acknowledging our youth poets. We had a contest where poets all through Hayward competed, submitted poetry and poems, and we have our 3 winners. And let me make sure I have my list here. Our 3 winners, coming in 3rd place is Sudan. I should have practiced this. Sudan Sana. Was it Sihapati? Is she here? Where? Oh, there you are. Okay. Yes. Yes. So how do you say your name? What is it? Shadesha? Shadeshna. Okay, all right, okay. Thank you. And then our 2nd place is James Matthew Frerer. James, thank you. And of course, our 1st place winner is Atisni Iowa. Miss Iowa, is she here? Yes, there you are. Good. All right. So why don't you, Miss Iowa is from Leadership Public High School, and then James is from Tennyson High School, and here we go again. Shadeshna is from Mount Eden High School. So let's give him another big round of applause. There you go. And Miss Yoa, there you go.
Congratulations. Jump in there?
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to take the photo first before you take it, okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, don't get me this time, please. Thank you. Please open. Thank you. Excellent. Good evening, everyone here. Mayor Salinas, council members, city manager, and staff. My name is Winda Shimizu from Hayward Arts Council. Poetry is alive in Hayward. In 2022, Germani Latchinson became the first youth poet laureate. 2 years later, fast forward to today, another group of amazing judges selected at City Ulloa as the next Hayward Youth Poet Laureate. This selection was the product of important collaborations of community organizations like Hayward Arts Council, Hayward Unified School District, Alameda County Supervisor Elisa Marquez, and of course the City of Hayward, coming together to provide citywide information about the program as well as funds to reward the winners. We thank these community organizations, the judges, and participants. Congratulations to Youth Poet Laureate at City Ulloa from Leadership Public School and the finalists, James and Sudeshana. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Our next presentation is a proclamation to acknowledge Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. And I'm glad that Winda is here because I believe Winda, the Executive Director of the Hayward Arts Council, is going to be receiving this. So, Councilmember, if you can hold on to that. So here's the proclamation. Whereas this Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month of April is the 6th annual statewide celebration first established by the California State Legislature in 2019. And whereas the City of Hayward, the Hayward Arts Council, and the Hayward Historical Society believes that arts, culture, and creativity are essential to our thriving community. And whereas arts inspire discovery, lifelong learning, and joy. Whereas culture creates connections, encourages understanding, and strengthens community. And whereas creativity sparks growth, positive change, and whereas the City of Hayward, the Hayward Arts Council, and Hayward Historical Society leads efforts to advance the arts through programs, partnerships, and the community building initiatives such as Dia de los Muertos, exhibits, Black History Month programs, school tours, collecting city history, presenting art exhibitions by emerging and professional artists, and showcasing student exhibits. And whereas the City of Hayward values partnering with the work of Hayward Arts Council, the Hayward Historical Society, county-level arts organizations, Alameda County Arts Commission and Arts Partnership Network, and state-level organizations like Create California. And whereas this collective work at the local level and throughout the state encourages social justice, uplifts our community, and changes our lives for the better. Now, therefore, I, Mark Salinas, Mayor of the City of Hayward, and on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2024 as Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. So let's give the artists a big round of applause. Okay. So here it is. The what? Okay. Our next presentation is our next presentation is going to be the Fair Housing Month proclamation. We have two. We have two guests to receive this. One of the guests from Echo Housing is not here tonight, so they will be their proclamation will be mailed to them. But here we do have representatives from Bay East Realtors, and if we can give our realtors a big round of applause, that'd be great. Let's see. I want to make sure.
So, Mayor Salinas, I'm actually here from Echo Housing.
Oh, Echo Housing is. Oh, okay.
Hi.
Oh,
virtually.
perfect. Thank you, Angie. Thank you
Yes,
very
hi.
much, Miss. Okay, Miss Angie Watson Hajim, right?
Yes.
Thank you
Hello.
very much. Thank you. And then after this, I'm sure I know we have your address, so we'll mail you the proclamation.
Great. Thank
So
you.
thank you very much. Okay, so here it is. Proclamation. Whereas April 2024 marks the 56th anniversary of the Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, known as the Civil Rights Fair Housing Act. And whereas this act provides equal housing opportunity for all Americans, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin, as well as seeks to ensure fair practice in the sale, rental, or financing of property. And whereas the Fair Housing Amendments of 1988 added new rights, remedies, monetary penalties, and strengthened its enforcement procedures. And whereas the Fair Housing Amendment Act seeks to provide equal housing opportunities to affirmly further housing choices, to eliminate legal barriers to equal housing opportunities, and to emphasize equal housing opportunities as a fundamental human right for all. And whereas individuals in the city have the right to choose where to live without discrimination based on race, color, religion, age, sex, disability, gender identity, familial status, or national origin. And whereas the City of Hayward fully supports the intent and purpose of the Federal Fair Housing Act, local fair housing laws, and other policies to advance fairness and equity in housing opportunities. Now, therefore, I, Mark Salinas, Mayor of the City of Hayward, on behalf of the Hayward City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2024 as Fair Housing Month. So let's give all of our housing professionals a big round of applause. And Ms. Watson Hajim, would you like to make a few comments? And then I'll go to the Bay East. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Salinas. Yes, well, I just want to say on behalf of our executive director and all of our staff members at Echo House, we really truly appreciate the partnership that we've had with the City of Hayward. You have funded our agency for over 30 years, providing fair housing services to the community. And we really appreciate your help in helping us to just make sure that everyone that lives in Hayward, that comes in Hayward, has equal access to housing. So just really appreciate all of your support through these 30 years. And I hope that we can continue our partnership. We really are so grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And let's give Echo Housing a big round of applause. And then I'll go down and present Bay East Association of Realtors next.
Okay. Okay. Well, good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and staff. I'm Barbara Clemens, the 2024 President of the Bay East Association of Realtors. And on behalf of the Bay East Association of Realtors, I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this presentation. This evening, I'm here with my fellow Bay East colleagues. They're wonderful. And to accept this resolution proclaiming April as Fair Housing Month. We appreciate the City Council recognizing the importance of keeping fair housing issues top of mind for its residents. This resolution is a powerful symbol of that commitment, and I accept this with one promise, that Bay East will continue to ensure that all who seek to become homeowners are provided fair, equitable, and professional help from our members, and we've got over 6,000. So we also promise this, that we will continue to partner with the city to provide further principles and increase initiatives for fair housing. So again, I'd like to thank you for this proclamation, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next presentation is to acknowledge National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And, you know, these are the folks that we don't see, but when we pick up the phone and call 911, they are the first voice we hear. And so these are absolutely some of the most important team members of our public safety team. To accept this evening, we have our Chief of Police, Brian Matthews, is here. And of course, he's accompanied by Captain Javier, and Captain Olson is here. And I know he's our Sergeant at Arms, but I see Sergeant Wagner over there too. So, and then I'll read the proclamation, and we'll meet up here. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, proclamation. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property, and whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from residents who telephone the Hayward 911 Communication Center, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our residents have with emergency services, and whereas public safety telecommunications are the single vital link to our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them with information, and ensuring their safety, and whereas the members of the Hayward 911 Communication Center have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients, and whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their jobs. And whereas the City of Hayward owes a debt of gratitude to the dedicated men and women of the Hayward 911 Communication Center who dedicate their lives to answering phone calls during times of intense personal crisis and community-wide disasters, and who are the first and single point of contact for those persons seeking relief during an emergency. Now, therefore, I, Mark Salinas, Mayor of the City of Hayward, do hereby proclaim the week of April 14th, through the 20th, 2024, as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give all of our dispatchers and 911 operators a big round of applause. Yeah, go ahead. And I incorrectly gave Lieutenant Wagner's title wrong. He's Lieutenant Wagner, not Sergeant Wagner. But
Lieutenant Wagner is actually going to make comments tonight, so he didn't know that before he walked. No, I'm kidding. I just want to take a moment, Mayor and Council, to say thank you on behalf of the men and women of the Hayward Fire Department and the Hayward Police Department for taking time out of your busy schedule to recognize some of the hardest working people in the city, and that's the folks that work in our comm center. They have a very, very busy, very, very difficult and trying job that they do. They remain available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, to answer calls for service and to dispatch field personnel so that we can help folks who, quite frankly, are having their worst day. Often they don't get the closure that field personnel do because they take the initial call, they hear the chaos, but they don't get to close the loop by completing a medical call or completing an investigation. And so they do, much like field personnel, suffer from some of the same traumatic experiences that we do. And so can't thank them enough for the difficult job that they do, and really appreciate your ongoing support of them and their work. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and please tell everyone over there in the communication center congratulations, and of course to all the men and women in the Hayward Police Department. Please be safe out there. Our next presentation is kind of an interesting. It's a really. This is one of those presentations that is, you know, it's a historical sort of transition. It's a sort of a very. It's our first transition in the history of the city, and this is where we pass the torch from one City of Hayward Poet Laureate to the second City of Hayward Poet Laureate. And I'm not an English major. I'm certainly not I didn't major in poetry in college, but I'll tell you, I've always admired poets because they have just they have a knack with language. They have a knack with metaphors that they can wrap them up in stanzas and articulate some of the most powerful imagery and some of the most powerful experiences of a city. And Bruce Roberts, who was our first, our inaugural Poet Laureate, has done a wonderful job as being a Hayward native. His poetry has certainly resonated with residents over the years, and he has literally put the Hayward experience to words. And so I wanted to thank Bruce for his poetry and for his service in the city. I do have a certificate of commendation. I will read the accommodation, and then I'll have Councilmember Andrews hold that, and then Bruce, you can come on up. And I don't know if I don't know if there's like a final poem or like a ending poem. I don't know, or if but we'll see when we get there. Okay. So certificate of commendation. Whereas Mr. Bruce Roberts was appointed to the City of Hayward, was appointed the City of Hayward's first Poet Laureate in 2015. And Mr. Roberts is truly made in Hayward, being born and raised in Hayward and worked as a part-time teacher of English at Chabot College, as well as a teacher of history at Cesar Chavez Middle School in the New Haven Unified School District for 35 years. Mr. Roberts' grandfather was the founding principal of the old Hayward Union High School in 1911. Go Farmers. And Mr. Roberts attended this school for 2 years before moving to the new Hayward High School, and after high school, graduated in 1968 from Cal State Hayward with a BA in English, and then from UC Santa Barbara with a master's degree in English. So, that's a pretty big flex. You went to the old Hayward High and the new Hayward High all in one high school career. So that's pretty, that's good. Whereas Mr. Roberts is a strong supporter of literacy in the community and has served as a volunteer board member of the Hayward Literacy Plus Council for 9 years and is currently the board secretary. And whereas Mr. Roberts was enthusiastic in inspiring Hayward residents to appreciate and write poetry and has written many poems to commemorate and honor local and national events, and Mr. Roberts was asked to continue in his role as Poet Laureate through the building and opening of the new 21st Century Library and Community Learning Center, as well as through the pandemic. And whereas Mr. Roberts continued in his role as Poet Laureate through the 23rd of April, 2024, and generously offered to continue through this period without being paid a stipend for the additional years. And whereas Mr. Roberts introduced the idea of having a youth poet laureate in Hayward and was instrumental in starting the program and helped with the selection of the city's first Youth Poet Laureate in 2022. And whereas after serving as the city's Poet Laureate for 9 years, he served as a judge in helping select his successor, the next Poet Laureate for Hayward. Now, therefore, I, Mark Salinas, Mayor of the City of Hayward, and on behalf of the City Council, do hereby commend Mr. Bruce Roberts on his years of service and education and literacy, and his passion, success, and dedication to inspiring love of poetry in the city of Hayward. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Mr. Bruce Roberts a big round of applause.
Tires me out just hearing about all the things I've done over the past few years. One is a memorial patio to the old Hayward High School that Francisco, our councilman, was one of our partners in developing. So if you ever get over behind Safeway, check it out. It's really beautiful. And we have a solar light from the old campus that is there. So if you get there after dark, you get this lovely glow. Anyway, yeah, 9 years ago, Mayor Holliday sidled up to me and said, "Hey, you want to be poet laureate?" Oh, well, sure. I'd been elbowing my poems into the art galleries, and that's probably how I came to her attention, I would guess. And as Mayor Salinas said, I was born here. I've been here a long time, you know, because just a few feet over that way was the Hayward Hospital. That was my mother's failed Hayward experiment. All my siblings were in Oakland. Anyway, but it's been fun, and all good things must come to an end. And even though I'm officially not the poet laureate anymore, I had cards made up with emeritus on it, so you can still sneak me in if you want to. Anybody who would like, as Mayor Salinas said, I spent 35 years reading to junior high kids in Union City, which is very much the same demographic as Hayward, and I'd be happy to read poetry anytime, any place. I didn't bring any tonight, otherwise I could keep you here the rest of the evening. But c'est la vie. Thank you very much. It's been an honor, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And don't leave yet, because I'm going to introduce the new poet, and then the three of us can take a picture down below. But ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you our second and our new poet laureate for the city of Hayward. Her name is Leticia Guzman. Let's take a picture with Bruce. Hey, why don't you come over here, Bruce? We can. And I believe our new poet laureate, Leticia Guzman, has some remarks and a poem.
Yes, I have a poem. Could I use that one and face the crowd? Or I could turn this around? Oh, okay, cool. Yay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. This is a poem I wrote. In community, we hold each other vulnerable and kind. Community looks like a hand on the street. Okay, cool beans. Thank you. In community, we hold each other vulnerable and kind. Community looks like a hand on the street, or holding the door open for each other. It is sharing meals, and maybe community is just a big-ass potluck, an offering of kindness, the type that fills our spirits. And reminds us what true fullness feels like. Community is expanding each other's opportunity. Maybe community is redistribution. You see, when I say put you on, I mean sharing resources. Community is listening with intention, our stories and wisdom transcending. It is acknowledgement of the land, of our privilege, how we take and make space. Maybe community is reflection and seeing faces that look like mine in a room. I know I am held in community when I am shown love and asked how I am doing, when I am celebrated for all of my loud mouth, all of my brown girl swagger, all of the ways that I express joy. So thank you so much for holding me. I'm really excited to build community with you all and serve as Hayward's Poet Laureate. Thank you so much.
And I can,
I just want to invite all of you to come and meet our outgoing Poet Laureate, our incoming Poet Laureate, all of our Youth Poet Laureate candidates, and just come celebrate poetry this Saturday at the Lit Hop from 3 o'clock at the Hayward Heritage Plaza. So, and thank you all so much. Happy National Poetry Month.
thank you. And I think I can say this with a great deal of certainty. You are our first Chicana Latina Poet Laureate. Thank you very much. Okay, so I would like to move on to our next item, which is public comments, and this is reserved for anybody that would like to make a public comment that is not on the agenda. And I have, let's see, I have, there's 3 hands here. Let me go online first, and I see Carl G. Go ahead.
Hi there. My name is Carl Gorange, and I'm here with Christina Deptula, and we would like to congratulate Hayward's new Poet Laureates. And we would like to tell you about an exciting event happening this Saturday.
And I'm Christina Deptula, and on Saturday, April 27th, Hayward will hold its 3rd annual Lit Hop, which is an event to introduce this year's Hayward Poet Laureate and celebrate the creativity and literary talent of Hayward and East Bay Area writers.
The event begins at 2 p.m. with a musical performance at Heritage Plaza, courtesy of the 30-piece East Bay Symphonic Band. And at 3 o'clock, the event will transition into its literary portion with an announcement of Hayward's new Poet Laureates by our mayor, Mark Salinas, and a representative from State Senator Aisha Wahhab's office. The Poet Laureates will then give poetry readings.
The hop portion of the event starts at 4 p.m. Members of 13 local writers groups will be reading their work at 8 historic and much-loved venues concentrated in downtown Hayward, mostly on B Street. And a full schedule is posted on the Hayward Lit Hop website, haywardlithop.com.
And thank you. Hope to see you there.
Thank you very much. Our next caller is Peggy Guernsey.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I've been trying to find out with no answers from city manager or many of the city council members. I would like to know what is going to happen with the solar panels owned and used by the city of Hayward when after approximately 20 years of use, they're no longer usable. Where will they be put or thrown away? My understanding is that all solar panels and their pieces are toxic. They're not recyclable or reusable, just like electric Prius, Teslas, and all electric car batteries. I know the city has a solar farm full of panels. There are solar panels in parking lots at the Kaiser and the school districts and hospital up at UC Hayward and all over the city. And I'm very concerned where this toxic mess is going to go in our city of Hayward. Or are we going to throw it into landfills or stack it up somewhere for them to rot into the land? I realize and respect that the city manager is leaving, but I've been asking for on and off for several months and nobody seems to have any answers except, yeah, they're toxic and you can't do anything with them. This is a big, ugly mess. It's like poison, and I'm gonna say it's as bad as nuclear rods because you can't do anything with them. So city council and mayor, I would like some answers, and seriously, because some of those solar panels that are out there are over 20 years old. And I know the ones we buy on our houses, they tell us they don't last more than 20, 22 years, and you have to replace them, and there's nothing you can do with them. So somebody, please, let's get some serious looking into what's going on with this poison in the city of Hayward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next caller is Jesse Gunn.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, I just wanted to congratulate the city and the Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force for a very well-run citywide cleanup hosted at Weeks Park. It was a great event, and I was really happy to see so many community members coming out for that. I also got to participate in the Cesar Chavez Middle School cleanup and tree planting event there before I walked down to Weeks. And so it was just great to see so many people out coming together in community. And I realize these are sort of one-off events, but I feel like they set the tone of where our values are, and that if we all come together, we can make things better. And it was just really great to see. So I just wanted to thank the city and the task force.
Thank you. And then I do have two cards here, but they look like they're specifically regarding the housing item. So I will defer.
Mayor Salinas, do you have one from Tom Ferreira?
I do, right here. Is that this one? Tom Ferreira.
Red is on, right? Okay, red is good. Good evening, the Mayor and City Council. I'm Tom Ferreira, and tonight I'm representing Hayward Concerned Citizens. On the behalf of our membership, we want to wish City Manager Kelly McAdoo a fond farewell as she ventures off to her new position in Santa Barbara. Kelly, you've been a valuable leader and the resource to our city and to our group. We appreciate your responsiveness, your time, and your willingness to hear us out on many issues throughout the city. We also appreciate that you have valued and included our organization as stakeholders in city matters. We hope Santa Barbara will be as impressed as we have been with your expertise and dedication to those you serve. So thank you from all of us, best wishes, and thank you for 14 years of service in Hayward. Wow. Thank you.
We still got about a week and a half to go, so yeah.
Oh, I know, everyone's reminding me and wanting me to do things in that last week and a half.
And I got some to-do things still on my list. So. No, thank you for that. And of course, our next item, so I like to close public comment, and our next item is our city manager's comments.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And as you heard from Mr. Ferreira, and as many of you know, tonight is my actual last business meeting with the Hayward City Council after spending about almost 14 years spending every Tuesday evening in the City Council chambers, which is kind of crazy to think about. We are apparently having a ceremonial meeting next week, so I'm going to not talk too much this evening, but I couldn't let this meeting pass by without acknowledging this moment. I'm going to My last day with Hayward will be Friday, May 3rd. And you heard I will be departing to go be the city manager in Santa Barbara in Southern California. And for those who won't be here next week, I just wanted to take a moment to thank the council, city staff, and this community for allowing me to serve for all of these years. It has been an absolute honor and a privilege, and I will miss everyone tremendously. And I will leave it at that for this evening, because next week I'll have more to say, I'm sure. But thank you all for allowing me to be here and to be in community with all of you. So now I'm going to go on to actual city manager comments. We have a few this evening, which I want to acknowledge some of the great events and things that are happening. Last Saturday, April 20th, we hosted our 41st annual Earth Day celebration at Weeks Community Park. You can see some of the photos up there. We had over 300 people participate first in a citywide litter pickup. And then following the litter collection, volunteers enjoyed a free lunch from El Taquito. Thank you very much. Music from a local DJ, drawings for prizes, a display of entries from our Earth Day poster and writing contest, and a community fair with 30 groups tabling with various sustainability-themed activities and prizes. We had our best turnout ever with over 400 people in attendance, which is amazing. Mayor, many council members, HARD board members, students and teachers from Hayward Unified School District, as well as many local community groups. The event was a collaborative effort, including the Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force, the Hayward Area Recreation and Park Districts, our Maintenance Services Department, and our Environmental Services team that's part of our Public Works Department. So kudos to everyone who was involved in the planning of that event. Next update, I want to talk about the SIMI seat pilot program. SIMI, I said right, SIMI, right, okay. We are installing seating at 12 priority bus stops to enhance the transit waiting experience in the city. SIMI seats, as you can see on the screen, are compact-sized benches installed at bus stops with limited space for large furniture. The 12 bus stops were selected as a pilot based on AC Transit's accessibility study. The first SIMI seat was installed on Tennyson Road at Dickens Avenue, and the remaining 11 will be completed within the next few months. QR codes will be posted at each stop so that bus riders can learn about the SIMI Seat pilot program, fill out a user experience survey, and report any maintenance issues. So very excited to have that get started. From our library, El Día del Niño, Children's Day, is celebrated on the 30th of April each year. We hope you will come celebrate the event a little early with the Hayward Public Library on April 25th. There will be a special performance of El Brujo y la Sirena, The Wizard and the Mermaid, by the always popular Cascada del Flores. You'll discover, sing, and dance to the music of lots of Latin American countries with their different rhythms, languages, and of course, a lot of different kinds of guitars. This participatory and free family show will be in English and Spanish and will be held from 11:30 to 12:30 at the Fremont Bank Room on the second floor of the downtown library. The event is sponsored by First Five of Alameda County and is free, and all ages are welcome to join. And lastly, one more from our library. As part of our library's strategic planning process, the library is inviting input from children through art. When you think about what you want your dream library to be like, what comes to mind? Children 12 and under are invited to draw a picture showing what they think would make Hayward Public Library even better. All participants will be entered into a drawing to win prizes, books, gift cards, and more. To learn more and enter, you can go on the city's website. There's also a web address here, bit.ly/HPL-art-contest. So please encourage your children to participate. And those are my comments this evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. And I wanted to go back and reopen public comment. And Kay, did you want to speak public comment, or did you want to wait till you get to the housing item? Okay, come on up and then you can do public comment.
Good afternoon. Good to see you guys again. I'm not sure, so happy that you'll be happy with my comments. As I represent the public standing before you right now and one of its members, of which I'd like to express some concerns. I'm concerned at the rate that minorities, especially black women, are being evicted, especially illegally. And it's being done even in court with illegal, trumped-up charges with such big businesses like Reliant Group, who's the owner of Reliant Property Management, now doing business as Cornerstone Residential, and at the rate of which tenants such as like Leisure Terrace apartment tenants are suffering since the year 2019, which the then City Council, some of which of you are still current members of the City Council, have not been dealing with. I'm concerned that it appears, not appears, but there are signs all over the city that says the city of Hayward isn't racist. I'm beginning to doubt that. Cities such as Hayward seem to only want to protect rich landlords. And poor tenants, especially the poor in affordable housing, are suffering. Your city representatives, such as your housing manager, telling especially poor tenants at Leisure Terrace apartments that they have no rights. Rent stabilization doesn't exist. Tenant protections don't exist. That their own laws that they pass don't exist. That landlords have no responsibilities, only rights. Is that true? Do you know that to be true? Then why is that what's being exercised on behalf of the city? Building codes. We can't file building codes reports as tenants, especially, I guess, the poor ones. Because you file a report, even against habitability issues, and the city gives the tenant a 2-month appointment, in which time the property is allowed to fix the problem, and then they come out and say there was no problem. The tenant was just being disgruntled for no reason. That's what's happening. That's the city's track record for at least the past 5 years. Employees that we know and met that were supposed to be responsible for housing, we're being told, never existed. And when we say we had a business card from them, then we're told they're no longer with the city, that they're even dead or didn't even exist. Only come to find out that they're still with the city.
Okay, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you guys do something about it.
Thank you.
There's another public comment I'll be doing on behalf of someone else. They have a right to public comment if they wish to have somebody speak for them.
But you know, they're not here right now. And
Yes, they are.
Where?
The very back. Okay. Well, we'll wait till they come back.
Okay.
Come back in. She had to go use the restroom.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to close public comment and then move on to our action items, which is our first item is our consent calendar, items 1 through 8.
I'll move them.
I did not see anybody going to pull anything, so moved by Councilmember Syrup, seconded by Councilmember Andrews, and if there are no objections, the minutes will, or the consent calendar will unanimously pass. Thank you. Next is our work session, item number 9, which is the Housing and Homelessness Task Force continuation work session regarding the regarding the term of the Homelessness Housing Task Force Committee. And this will, I guess our Development Services Director, Sarah Bowser, will deliver this. And before she starts, I just wanted to thank Council Members Syrup and Council Members Goldstein and I for serving on this committee, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. So Director Bowser, go right ahead.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. I am going to quickly turn this over to our Housing Manager, Christina Morales, who will present this item this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Christina Morales, Housing Division Manager. The item before you is a work session to discuss the future of the Homeless Housing Task Force. The term for the Housing Homelessness Task Force expired in March of this year. And so the purpose is to discuss the future of the task force. As a recap, the task force was approved in 2019 for a 2-year term, which was extended twice for a total of 5 years. Over that time period, we've discussed many topics with the Homeless and Housing Task Force, specifically to have more in-depth conversation regarding these items related to the homelessness and housing crisis. Everywhere you see the primary topic discussed were our rent stabilization efforts. We also discussed items such as affordable housing, homeownership efforts, and topics related to addressing homelessness. We've enacted multiple legislation for tenant protections and updated our affordable housing ordinance and developed an incentive to housing production work plan and also the Let's House Hayward plan. We have prepared a few reasons. As we discussed, there are really 3 options on what to do now that the term has expired, but some information to consider are reasons to maintain the Homelessness Housing Task Force is that it provides a review of agenda items before they come to City Council. It provides a venue to have these more in-depth conversations with the public and additional public participation, and also to give some preliminary policy direction to staff before it comes to the full council. If the council feels that the Homeless Housing Task Force needs to be termed out, some of the reasons may include that really a lot of the topics that we discuss require input of the full council and participation. In many cases, urgent items get expedited and go directly to City Council anyway. We've recently seen diminishing public participation in the Homelessness Housing Task Force, and there's also been inconsistency in scheduling the meeting. So as you consider the future of the Homeless Housing Task Force, there are 3 outcomes that would be expected and to give an opinion on: whether the Homeless Housing Task Force should be on an ongoing basis without a term limit and be converted to a standing committee, whether it needs another temporary term and extended for a specific amount of time and maintain it as a task force, or disband the task force and then items that would have been brought to the Homeless Housing Task Force would go direct to City Council. That concludes my report, and we are available for questions.
Thank you. Before I call on council, I just wanted to acknowledge, again, Council Members Syrup and Goldstein for serving on the committee with me. The task force, when we established it, it was established under this context that there was a great deal of urgency to respond to a variety of issues. Tenant protections, to tighten up on our policy, our vision and our policy objectives around not only housing, but around homelessness. And to some extent, I mean, to bring a sense of clarity and to bring a sense of, to sort of get a grip on our housing policy and housing policies in the city. And and over the last couple of years, I think there have been some incredible advances that we've made, and I know the committee has certainly have seen those advances. I mean, a residential rent stabilization ordinance came out of that. all of the big state policy goals and objectives have come out of there. The housing element has come out of there. I mean, we've done some heavy lifting that's come out of there, and now we're sort of waiting to see, or not waiting, but we're now sort of watching these policies unfold and sort of watching them grow and sort of mature. And so what I wanted to do, and I was reading the pros and cons of, you know, keeping the committee and discontinuing the committee. And you know, pros, you know, of course I agree with what you have here, and those are some good observations. And I do acknowledge the cons. I mean, there's the meetings, and you know, and I should also say that this committee, particularly this committee, we have invested a lot of logistics in this committee so that it is accessible, and in that it is really accessible to all renters and all of our stakeholders in the housing space. And you know, I feel, just to sort of put this out there and put it on the table, you know, I feel that the committee has, we've done our work in the committee, and while we're certainly not done with our housing policy and our housing agenda, and I know that that's a major policy priority for us, I would suggest, and I guess I'd like to just sort of open this up for a comment, and I know my colleagues here might have other perspectives on this. But what I'd like to do is, if we don't eliminate it, at the very least, what I'd like to do is maybe pause the committee, if not eliminate it, so that it gives staff and it gives us the opportunity to sort of watch what we're doing grow a bit. And if we know we have the infrastructure to reconvene this committee, but if we need to reconvene it down the road, we can certainly reconvene it. But at the very least, put a pause. At the very most, we could certainly eliminate it. But for those reasons, I would like to sort of start sort of the conversation and start the talking up here. But I do know that, you know, staff has put an incredible amount of work. This committee has done, you know, and I say committee, but what I really want to emphasize is, Ms. Morales, you and your team have done some extraordinary work. I mean, through the pandemic and you know, pre and post pandemic work, the amount of work that you have invested in the work in this, I think we've done some. You know, I think we've done some extraordinary work here, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not saying this just to sort of overhype the work you guys have done, but we have been the first in the county in a lot of policy priorities and a lot of the policies that we've done. We have been first in the county, and we remain ahead of the curve in the county in a lot of the work we've done. And so I think we certainly, all of us up here, certainly deserve credit for that, and your staff has certainly positioned this city in a very strong place in that work. So I wanted to thank you for that. So with that said, those are going to be my comments. I might have a little bit more at the end here, but I just wanted to start with those. Let me see, I'm sure I have some hands up here. Actually, this is a work session, so I go to public comment first. So let me, I should have saved those before or afterwards, but okay. So I have one card here, and I believe, this is item 9. So I think there is, you have another? This is item 9. Oh, this is item 9, right? Huh? Did I get confused? Okay, item 9. Colin Thermoto.
Hi. My name is Colin Thormoto. I'm a housing advocate. I'm on the Community Services Commission. And I wanted to encourage the City Council to try and move the Homelessness and Housing Task Force into a full standing committee. The reason why I think this is important is because in 2021, and I think if anything, things have gotten worse, is that the housing and homelessness are the #1 concern of the residents in our city. And as the mayor even pointed out during his comments, we still have work to do. There's still a lot more that can be done. And I do think that the crisis for which the task force was created doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. And there's a lot of room to use a subcommittee, much like all the other subcommittees, to develop policy that can then be brought to the full council without having multiple work sessions and public hearings and all the rigmarole that needs to happen for a full meeting. Also, I do think that it fits within the strategic plan rather nicely. There is preserve and protect housing for all, and that's a priority that I think deserves concentrated attention from the City Council. And again, it doesn't have to be everybody. I totally understand that there's limited time, there's limited staffing, though I do appreciate that our housing staff has gotten a few more people in it recently, which is great. But I think it would be great to have some really concentrated attention on housing because it is such a huge issue. As we found out during multiple public comments, there's a lot of issues that the residents of the city don't have anywhere else to go except to the full council, and you're not allowed to respond during public comment. And if there's not the focused attention, it's very easy with all the different priorities that everybody has. I mean, you know the wheel for the strategic priorities. It's very easy for something to fall off and to not necessarily get the attention it deserves. So with all of that in mind, I definitely understand the staffing issue, but if that is not hopefully too burdensome for city staff, I think it would be a fantastic idea and a benefit to the city to continue this as a full committee that doesn't require reevaluating every year. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public commenter is Kay.
Before I start, am I going to get, now that the person is back in the room, am I going to get to do that public comment again? Now that they're back in the room?
You can, yeah, this card right here, right?
No, the one before.
I will go ahead and make your comment, and we'll see how it goes after this comment. Go ahead.
I appreciate that the city, as anyone else, an individual, likes to consider themselves doing good work and likes to pat themselves on their back for it. However, as public servants, which to my understanding that you are, since you're publicly elected, or even as civil servants, you're here to serve the public, not the small, rich minority, but the public at large. And you should consider it your uttermost responsibility to protect the poor, the weak, and the defenseless, especially against the rich. That's why laws were made in general from the beginning of time, is to protect those who don't have the ability to protect themselves from the most powerful and from the most rich, to make society a better, even living place for all. I would hope that that is part of each of you all's individual mantra as public servants. Check yourselves and how responsible you are, your predecessors, and what you are contributing as current sitting representatives. How much are you contributing to homelessness getting to be a bigger, larger problem instead of solving it? When you empower landlords, especially the rich ones, not to obey your own ordinances, housing ordinances, and you change them to suit the most current landlord in your face, to allow them to break all these ordinances. When you tell poor tenants to go to court in civil court to fight it themselves, that they can't even file police reports against landlord harassment. That is not preventing homelessness. That is not protecting your public at large. I'm going to challenge you all. Be more about your jobs and not your personal. Not your personal uprising, scaling to the heights of society. I hope that is not your intent in being a public servant. Please do better. Now may I give the rest of...
You may, go ahead.
I'm not doing this to be hateful. I'm doing it to appeal to your humanity. I'm doing it to see if there's any humanity. We are dealing with humans and humanity when you choose to take these jobs. You have a larger responsibility, not just to look out for yourselves, but to protect the defenseless. The rich can afford to take care of themselves. It's the poor that can't find a lawyer, especially a tenant lawyer. No tenant lawyer will take affordable housing cases for tenants. You've got to resolve that, including the ones that you pay to do such jobs, which has been reported to you is not being done. And your city manager is very aware of it, because I've been telling her for the last 5 years. The city has a right to public records, what you consider and call public records, such as properties, building codes, reports. We're being denied them, especially if we don't have the right pocket, if we're not of the right socioeconomics or the right color. When we don't have those things, we can't even take them to court, even if we wanted to try on our own, to be our own lawyers, to defend ourselves in eviction court. That's got to stop. I would wish, and I hope, the city stops violating its own housing laws, statutes, ordinances, all in favor of especially the rich landlords. Because we can see, not just cities like yourself, city of Hayward, but other cities are taking away poor landlords' properties. And it's unfortunate that they're all going to rich landlords and rich big conglomerates. That's got to stop. That is not going to solve homelessness. It only creates it. You have to enforce your own city ordinances against those who are breaking them. And it's not tenants that are usually breaking them. Tenants want a place to live. They want peace, quiet, and enjoyment, which the state and federal law and your own laws entitle them to. Please enforce them, not just against tenants, but against rogue, bad landlords. They don't need to get any richer off poor people. Do not make this a case of slavery, where when slavery ended, you take people off the streets for not having a job and work them to death. This is now the new slavery with affordable housing, where they're getting rich this way. Please stop it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I'd like to close public comment. Oh, wait, hold on. I have, let's see, Rex Lay.
Hi, thank you, council members, for looking over the rent registry and forming a task force for it. My name is Rex. I work with Filipino Advocates for Justice as a tenant organizer. I'm switched to part-time now, but yeah, during our last campaign.
Rex, what item are you calling in for?
Oh, I'm calling in for the rent registry.
Oh, that's for another item. So let me hold on a second. Hold on for a little bit, and we'll catch you on the next item.
All right.
Okay, thanks. Next caller is Calvin Wong.
Yes, hello. Yes, hi. Hi, I'm a Hayward resident and I just have an interest in housing issues. And so I guess I just wanted to strongly urge that the council either preserve the homelessness housing task force or reshape it into something similar that is perhaps more long lasting with, of course, with consideration of city staff constraints. And fundamentally, there are two very important aspects to tackling homelessness. And so one is being to prevent new homelessness, and another is to address existing homelessness. That said, the real solution there lies with the U.S. government at the national level, formally recognizing housing as a fundamental human right and taking steps to decommodify it at a federal level. But because that hasn't happened yet, there really needs to be a dedicated body at the local level working on identifying local solutions to address homelessness and having more affordable housing with the input of community members. And so I just see the task force as a long-term vehicle for city leaders to continue to flesh out these ideas and solutions as they come up. And I guess perhaps this is more fitting for a next item, but I guess I'll just add that one of those ideas that I heard of is that of the rental registry. And so I just wanted to add that I think that idea is a really cool one. And honestly, I wish that the city of Davis, when I was there for university, had a rental registry because I was completely foreign to Davis. And I wish I would have had some sort of tool to better understand the quality and affordability of the rental option there. And so I know that Hayward houses a lot of students from a lot of educational institutions. And so I'm confident that students would be a great beneficiary of that tool. And so I guess just in the end, I support making the homelessness housing task force something that exists on a longer term basis, especially considering how homelessness and housing insecurity isn't going to go away in Hayward anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Ro Aguilar.
Good evening. In reviewing the staff report on the pros and cons of creating a standing committee or letting the housing task force lax, I urge the council to transform the housing HHTF to a permanent standing committee and become a model for other governmental agencies. The existence of the task force and hopefully a future standing committee does not impede the desire of the city council to receive detailed input on housing related items. And on important and urgent issues, the task force should include a recommendation rather than be information to help guide the full council and expedite this decision-making process without slowing down action on the item. Community participation will increase as items are designated for committee recommendation, and the committee meets routinely with more prominent public notice as a standing committee. Preparatory staff work for the standing committee will save staff time when the items go before the full council, and on complex items likely prevent delay and referral to a subsequent council meeting. Now, Mayor Salinas, I am very disappointed to hear your comments, very disappointed. And your direction that you're leading with those comments, very disappointed. States and cities are not winning the battle against homelessness. Voters are frustrated that our elected leaders are not prioritizing resources to win the battle and solve this critical problem. Some governments are resorting to criminalization of the homeless and blaming the victims for government's lack of planning, lack of vision, and unwillingness to stand up to development interests. Again, I urge the council to transform the task force to a permanent standing committee and become a plus, like, you know, we're a plus now because we're supposedly ahead of a very low bar we're talking about here for governments, and become a model for other governmental entities. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Resendez.
Hi, good evening, City Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm actually in favor of what Mayor Salinas said, which is to give the task force maybe a short hiatus to see what are some of the mandates coming from the state of California. I know there's been talk of care courts and other things to address drug abuse within the homeless population. So maybe there does need to be a wait to see if care courts are going to get started and let the state kind of guide our decision making in that way. Thank you for funding a relocation fund. I think that should continue. As we know, Oakland and Hayward are both becoming more gentrified and expensive to live in. And so that relocation fund can help citizens with the costs of having to move to perhaps more affordable locations like the Valley or Humboldt County. Also, one last thing I wanted to mention, as we're putting funding toward alternative housing for the homeless in Hayward, I've often looked at the mobile home or the trailers. They're not mobile home trailers, they're like camping trailers that are at San Jose State University and in Berkeley that house the homeless, with the idea that if the residence becomes unlivable and has to be condemned, using trailers is a far less expensive option than using refurbished hotels or refurbished apartments for the homeless. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I don't see any more public comment, and I just wanted to check in everything. Everything seems to be okay now. Okay. Council member, I'd like to reconvene up here. So Council member Cermeño.
Mayor, thank you. And thank you, Christina, for a good report. I'm not a member of the task force, but I certainly appreciate and impressed with the work of my three colleagues on it. I think they've done enough. And of course, the city staff is right there also doing the same work. So with that in mind, I eventually will go along with whatever they recommend, since they are the ones at the front lines. In my mind, we should keep it, but I don't know how they feel about it. I know the mayor would like to pause it. That's one thing. That's certainly a possibility. I don't think we should get rid of it. Whether it becomes a commission, that's up to the recommendation of my colleagues, and also, of course, the recommendation of city staff. We also know that homelessness is going to be with us for a long, long time. And we also know that affordable housing is going to be a need for many, many, many years. So with that in mind, we should definitely attempt to keep the commission or the committee. And then, of course, we have the Supreme Court that will be deliberating homelessness. So we want to make sure that the task force is ready and willing to work with whatever the Supreme Court decides. So whether we take a step back and wait until the Supreme Court decides, or until the the state government decides what to do. We want to make sure that we're ready for that eventuality. So I certainly do not favor shutting down the committee. And whether it becomes a commission, that's up to my colleagues to make that recommendation. And thank you very much. And to my three colleagues, I thank you for the good work.
Thank you. Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, and thank you to our housing manager, Morales, for bringing this to us. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. On one hand, housing and homelessness really permeates every department in the city. It is part of our new stated vision for the city, quote, to be a regional leader in addressing the housing and homelessness crisis. That's part of our vision statement now. It is a strategic plan priority, so, knowing that it permeates everything, I'm not sure, we do need to continue the task force. On the other hand, a task force or even a full committee will be able to vet emerging trends and, even hearing, our housing element was a big part of it. I assume we're going to constantly revisit that. And to have a committee, a watchdog of sorts, to make sure we aren't letting anything slip. And our overall concern of housing and homelessness is there's value in that. And, get like Councilmember Zemenu, I don't serve in this committee, so I will defer to my colleagues on that. Finally, it's potentially tone deaf for us to let off the gas at this point. I mean, these are really pertinent issues for Hayward. I mean, having that, that task force or committee that allows us to highlight these really important issues is probably something we want to keep. There's obviously absolute value in that. So I'm open. I mean, I think at this point, either continuing the task force or creating a committee with potentially the same schedule. But I do want to ask you, Manager Morales, if, from what I'm hearing, the task force has been successful, right? Like there have been things that have come through there, and that's become policy in the city. So from your perspective, what is the staff difference between a task force and a committee? How do you find the task force to be useful in the work that you do?
The only difference is whether or not there's a term limit. So the committee doesn't have a term limit, while the task force does.
Okay, so basically we keep coming back at this every 2 years. Is that what's happening? Correct. Okay. And then also hearing, so there's been minimal or dwindling public participation in the task force, I understand. And if it became a committee, so that's really the only thing, is just the term limit, task force to committee.
Correct.
Okay, I'm really happy to hear from my colleagues on this one. I mean, obviously I'm making the case for myself to continue this at this point. And it's such a big value in Hayward. I don't see how we let the gas off at this point with this committee. So I'm interested to hear from my colleagues.
Thank you. Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with a lot of the comments that Councilmember Roche had mentioned. As we think about sort of the 5-year evolution of this task force, there's certainly a lot of great work that's been done, but I think there's no doubt there's a lot of important work ahead of us, and we have to stay focused. We have to keep, our attention on this. We have to remain responsive, and making this a committee further demonstrates our commitment to tackling the issue with the urgency and the leadership that's needed in this space. When I think about the decision that the City Council recently made to declare a state of emergency for homelessness and housing in the city, we only do that under, extreme conditions. And I think that was our acknowledgement that we need to continue to prioritize homelessness and housing as the top priority amongst all of us sitting here today, which is why that vote unanimously passed. So I think, we need to continue to make this a strategic priority. In the staff report, the way that I kind of, looked at the decision between a task force or a committee is if the council determines that the conversations regarding homelessness and housing policy should be ongoing without any clear term limit, that's what sold me. We have no clear way out of this homelessness crisis yet. I can see if we had an end in sight, then we can peg this committee, to that end. But it's an ongoing conversation that I feel very passionate about us needing to deal with it with a sense of urgency, and it needs to be dealt with at the council level, just like all the other committees we have. When I think about all of our strategic priorities, we just built a public safety committee to make sure that council has a handle on all of our priorities, and this being, arguably the #1 priority, I'm very much in favor of turning this into a full council committee. and not pausing it. I think that the issues require too much attention to be paused. I think that, you know, we have some regional housing bonds that are going to be coming through. The state's doing a lot of work. Our county COC is doing a lot of work. And we need to be at the table showing and demonstrating our commitment to resolving this for the people in Hayward who we owe it to. So with that, I'm in full support of making this a committee. Those are my comments on this item tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to start off by saying, Mayor, I understand your perspective on wanting to make room to watch our policies play out. I feel differently, more aligned with Councilmember Bonilla's perspective here as someone that has the privilege of serving alongside you and Councilmember Goldstein on this task force currently. To me, this conversation is why the task force should be a committee. The fate of our housing work coming up for review year after year makes it vulnerable to being closed down, and it makes my stomach churn if I were to take some point of privilege as the only renter on the dais currently, because there are so many other ideas and topics and solutions that I think we need to be prioritizing and working on and developing while we're watching our policies play out in real time. To me, a committee is an expression of the council's priorities, and we have, you know, a beautiful strategic roadmap wheel for us to remove housing in the middle of a homelessness crisis. I just don't know if that's the legacy I want for our council, especially after we declared a state of emergency. So I just, you know, I know some good points have already been made up. I especially don't want us to make a decision to not reaffirm this task force or make it a committee on the night we give out a proclamation for fair housing. That just feels a little ironic to me too. So I'll save most of my comments. I think they're made eloquently by a number of my colleagues here, and I would want to iterate my support strongly that we do make this a permanent committee of the council. I think we have, you know, we don't know when we're going to beat climate change either, right? So we keep that sustainability committee going. We don't know when our downtown is going to be revitalized and West Hayward and South Hayward are going to be booming business corridors, so we keep our economic development going. I think this is just a reaffirmation of our commitment to addressing this crisis. So I would encourage my colleagues to support making this a full committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to staff for your presentation. I understand the concern of pausing. I understand the concern of ending a task force. I also understand that homelessness is here, and we have to do as much as we can to resolve as much as we can. I would say that in general, if we are going to convert to a permanent committee, that will be a pause because it will take time to convert that committee and making sure that we have specific goals related to that committee versus a task force where you have an endpoint. Because one of the things that I would like to see if we do make it a committee is I want to review the data. I want to see the point in time count. I want to see what are the methods that the organizations we're funding, how successful they are, and what do we need to do to make them more successful. I also want to hear more about the impacts of federal decisions and regional decisions. And I feel like with this task force, I don't necessarily get a clear picture all the time with the task force, where I hope with the committee that can be something that we can review on an ongoing basis. I also feel that we do have other strategic priorities. I don't want to go into too much detail because that's the next item, but I do think that the downtown working group and addressing homelessness as part of that downtown working group is something that can be part of that committee as well. And then also looking at recommendations for the coordination. As Councilmember Bonilla mentioned, we do have this emergency ordinance. We know that we have other cities that are doing the same thing. How are they working together? And I'm not really clear on how they're working together and what happens, or how are we tracking the resources and services that individual needs in our city versus another city. Are they going to different cities? And I just want to make sure that the committee can look at those issues, because those are some of the questions that the public has been asking, and folks that are experiencing homelessness. What I've heard from some of the services that they receive is that it's very complicated to get the service. And so if the committee can look at how do we remove those barriers to get those services so that we can reduce homelessness, that would be helpful. So I would say if we do the full committee, I want to see what the actual outcomes are of that committee. Thank you.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Thank you, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Christina, for the report. You know, it's been a pleasure and an honor serving on the Homelessness Housing Task Force. It was created to address urgently the multitude of conversations that needed to happen to address a very shifting environment, shifting funding priorities, shifting funding from the state, a massive increase in homelessness, not just here in Hayward, but regionally and throughout the state. And the problems haven't gone away. The topics are still top of mind. Everything from housing, homelessness, to wraparound services, and you know, our moral obligation to serve the folks in this community that are typically the hardest ones to serve, the most in need. None of those problems have gone away, and our focus hasn't shifted. What has happened is we've gotten more efficient at being able to talk about it, to find the resources, to apply those resources, and to make a difference. And a lot of that credit really goes to staff for all of their hard work. But we have to own up to something also that has shifted, and that is there's other things that the city also needs to focus on. And unless we're willing to invest in more staff to continue to have ongoing meetings, I think we really need to consider giving staff some of their time back to focus on some of the other issues. And right now, I'm not feeling, just based on the last 12 months, the participation, or I should say lack of participation from our community partners, I'm just not feeling like it's justified to keep this going. Not quite willing to let it go away either. And so I think the mayor's proposal to put it on pause for a while and let's kind of watch and see how things go. If the community needs us, if shifting priorities, if state funding requirements or legal challenges require us to come back and look at this again, then I think we should do that. But for the meantime, I think we need to give it a pause and allow city staff to work on some of the other priorities around the city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Sire, did you have your hand up again, or let me before you speak, let me just let me say one thing. So I agree with everything that everyone has said, and I wasn't thinking a full committee. You know, I wasn't thinking moving this to a full committee. But I understand, I do understand the arguments, the cases, and I think, Bonilla, I think you raised some really good points. Councilmember Andrews, I think also you raised a couple of really good points about how the downtown working group, absolutely they're going to be grappling with this issue, and this will certainly be part of their discussion for sure. You know, I'm also, as everyone was talking, I had forgotten that we have our ad hoc committee that's before us. And I haven't fully decided who was going to serve on the ad hoc committee, but perhaps this is something that we sort of make sure the ad hoc committee discusses. I absolutely agree with Councilmember Andrews about evaluating specifically what our goals are for this task force or committee if we decide to go in that direction. And if we do go in this direction and making it a full committee, I really want to make sure, and I know we've done this in the past, and you know it's part of the conversation in this task force already, but I just really want to make sure that we allow data to drive our policy decisions. And I know that there's some some big data sets coming. We've got the point in time count coming, and other county-wide, regional-wide data coming to us. But I just really want to make sure that the decisions that come out of this task force or full committee, however it comes out of, whatever it turns into, that we have those two guiding principles. We have to really have a very clear scope of work, and truly be data driven. And I know we've been that in the past. I think Christina, Ms. Morales, your work, your team has been very data driven, and I appreciate that. So what I would do is, I would really want the ad hoc committee to really take this on and discuss this, and whatever maturation it comes back, that those are some of the items that we cover. Okay, Councilmember Syrup, get the last word.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I'm open to the idea of refocusing the scope, but I think that the task force itself could do that work because it's familiar with that work, and then bring it back for council's approval, because I really want to protect the focus of the ad hoc that's being built around the commission specifically, just so we're not muddying too much into one group. That's just my preference. For the public's information, when we talk about a committee, at least with the task force, we're talking about meeting 4 times a year. So we're really saying, this is a priority, and as a council, we're gonna have a committee meet 4 times a year to review the ideas in our Let's House Hayward strategic plan, which has about 20 projects that I think need to be responsive. We need to have updates on. And so when we're in an emergency, I think it's reasonable to say we wanna keep our finger on the pulse and meet a minimum of 4 times per year. And I'm open to us refocusing that scope. I think both the public commenter, Teresa, and Councilmember Andrews brought up a lot of topics that I think we should think about. How do we incorporate that into our Let's House Hayward strategic plan? These are all good ideas, and to me, all the more reason why this task force needs to continue. So I think to just directly address Councilmember Andrews' point, this task force already has a charge, and we can incorporate your feedback into it. I don't think we need to pause because we are in the middle of a state of emergency. I would like for us to meet. We missed our last meeting because of some scheduling conflicts. So my hope is, we are giving staff clear direction tonight that at a minimum, the task force continues, and maybe we come back with a motion to make it a full committee once we've maybe revisited the scope of the task force and what it would look like if it were to become a committee. So that's my proposal, but I really want to be explicit leaving here that we're not going to go 6 months without having a task force meeting, because this is a crisis that we're in right now.
Okay, so I'm more comfortable with that. Reconvening another task force meeting, and then on the agenda, just really focusing on what it looks like moving forward. I'm willing to have that discussion, and I think that's worth another meeting for sure. Councilmember Roach.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to support Councilmember Syrup's request or suggestion, because let's let the work of the task force sort of talk about next steps, and because I know our ad hoc committee is really talking about commissions. That's more of our sort of public. Community volunteer work. So it is a little bit different. It is more akin to a council committee than it is to a commission. So I support that, and it sounds like you're in support too. So I just wanted to say that.
Cool. Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you, Mayor. I also support the idea of this going back to the committee, but I'm hoping that we can time box it, right? I'm hoping that we can get a recommendation back like in the next few months here, so that it doesn't drag on forever. When I think about a state of emergency, most places when you're at a state of emergency, you're having daily calls. It's all hands on deck. Everyone's working day and night to resolve the issue. That's the same urgency I want to see us tackle this with. I'm not suggesting we go into daily council meetings, but I do think this, regular cadence doesn't make sense to meet 4 times a year, or doesn't make sense to meet every other month. So these are recommendations that I'm hoping the ad hoc committee, not the ad hoc committee, but the task force can go back and, talk through. I'm hoping that, Councilmember Andrews' point around, the, single points of, entry for the coordinated care system, all those things can be addressed. And I think, you probably know better than all of us what metrics we should be tracking here that are aligned with, what the county COC is doing and what the state is doing, so that we can really demonstrate progress in this space. We've been doing it well already. I think the city is a leader in this space, and I would hate to see us recede any of the progress we made because we don't have the appropriate levels of council engagement or priority. So I absolutely support this going back to the task force to come back with a fuller recommendation, really around how this could be continued, as the mayor said, with a very clear scope, and making sure that the goals that we're setting for the committee are data driven and we can back up, what we're saying through the data, rather that be the point in time count, the number of units that have been, whatever, right? So thanks again for this great work, and thanks to my council colleagues for serving on the task force, because you guys have really done some great work that has put Hayward in a leading position in this space, and I just want to continue to see us, deal with this issue in the way that we've done in the past. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
And Mayor, if I may just recap to make sure I understand. One, I also want a point of clarification. Because of the state of emergency, most of the items related to homelessness will go directly to City Council because it's been expedited. And then to recap, so my understanding is that we want to go back to Council to get authorization to schedule one additional meeting to discuss the future of the Homelessness Housing Task Force. Based on the recommendation from the Homelessness Housing Task Force, we will come back to Council with that recommendation, correct?
Go ahead.
Yes, so I think for me, I think it's a matter of semantics. When I'm saying pause, I'm trying to figure out, are we doing a reset here versus task force versus committee? Because it sounds like we all agree that it should be a committee. So I just want to clarify that. I do think we need something in place, but it sounds like the task force may have done its job and we might need to do a committee now. So I just want to clarify that. Thanks.
We'll see after the next task force meeting. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay. Ms. Morales, you know what to do now, right? Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So with that said, I'd like to close this item. Thank you very much, everybody. And I'd like to move on to item number 10, which is the next work session item, which is the strategic roadmap, discussion of updates to strategic roadmap fiscal year 2025. And I believe the city manager is going to kick this off.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This evening, our assistant to the city manager, Mary Thomas, is going to go through a brief PowerPoint. We've talked about the strategic roadmap updates a number of times already, so this is just sort of a final recap before we incorporate it into the budget document. So I will turn it over to Ms. Thomas to do the presentation. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so again, this will be quite brief. This is the updated vision statement. Thank you for taking the survey. You all were comfortable with this, so I'm not going to read it, and we'll include that. These are the updated priorities. Everyone was also comfortable with these, so we're good to go. And this is your ranking for code enforcement. I will say, having seen the data, there is a little bit of a disagreement. As you can see, there's a tie between street vendor enforcement and vacant property enforcement. So it doesn't actually give staff that much clarity. There is, just so you guys know, a little split between council and kind of where people are falling on those things. I'm sure you can continue to try and provide guidance to staff, but we will include both those on the strategic roadmap. Just so you know that the time is limited in their division. This is your prioritization for the Economic Development Planning Group. Again, just a reminder, we asked you to prioritize these because that group only has so many staff people, and whenever they do a report and make recommendations, there's then implementation work. Like if we do zoning changes for residential areas, there's then implementation after the recommendation. So that basically, assuming you guys are comfortable with this tonight, staff would kind of go down in this order, and all of these items would go to the Council Economic Development Committee as staff has capacity, and then would possibly go to other committees depending on the recommendations. I included other comments that were made. I'm not going to read them, but you can sort of quickly scanning them. I'll just say there's appreciation for a focus on downtown Hayward, some comments on kind of agreeing that they're comfortable with staff not adding something as a project, but wanting to iterate that this is an emphasis that staff has in mind. So we have that on a couple of different things here: increasing volunteerism, making sure that when we review ordinances, we're thinking about streamlining cannabis. Mentioning that we'll have Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force look at the dog bag initiative. That's something they're comfortable doing. Making sure that we're continuing to follow the BART parking lot situation, which we are. They have prioritized Hayward for their transit-oriented development projects, and then a couple other projects here, comments, and that is it. So tonight, what I'm looking for from you is, do you have any questions or comments that would change? You received the very long attachment that would kind of change your thoughts or things you want staff to change before the final adoption, which would be with the budget document. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to go to public comment, and let's see, I don't see anyone online. I don't see anyone, I don't have any cards, so I'd like to close public comment and return to the dais.
Mayor Salinas, my apologies, but I see two online.
Oh, there is two. Oh, okay. Okay, let me go back to online. Ro Aguilar.
Okay, I have a few, I think most of you know where I am with the strategic plan, but I just want to point out a few things that I hope the council will consider. In objective 1 under homelessness, that you add an HM4. I think we need to know, in terms of accountability, the number of people not served or turned away because of full shelters, either governmental or nonprofit, in Hayward. So it's nice to know the number served, but how many people are turned away? And we know that's probably a huge number, and that sort of gives us an indication of that need in terms of sheltering. It's limited, but it's important. And then objective 3, HM9, should include the number of affordable home ownership opportunities missed because the developer chose in lieu fees and not inclusionary housing. And we had a long conversation and discussion about that we're leaving it up to the developer to choose whether they want to pay in lieu fee or do inclusionary housing home ownership. And we have to track how many home ownerships are missed because the developer chooses in lieu fees. And also in the rental unit market, how many, when you have a market rate, affordable rental, number of affordable, maybe that doesn't apply there. But in the market rate rental, if the developer chooses in lieu fees instead of inclusionary. So this is affordable housing that we're building. But what about in the market rate, inclusionary housing that we're missing? How are we tracking that? How do we know, oh, we could have had, 50 inclusionary ownership, single family homes or rental units if we had only required the developer to do the inclusionary housing. We allow them the option now. I would like to see it required. I look forward to a report from staff telling me that we would have one inclusionary, because all these developers said, oh yes, I'll do inclusionary. And we didn't miss any opportunities for inclusionary. That would be great, but I don't think that's what the report would say. So we need that data to decide in the future whether we want to require developers. And finally, objective 3, HP10, creating a rent registry system. I do support that for a number of reasons. And, if it leads to less evictions and vacancies equals less homeless. So that's what we're trying to do, is reduce the homeless. And this is a tool the staff can use to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Rex Lay.
Yeah, wanted to thank you earlier for, in terms of the strategic plan going through with the rent registry. I've canvassed like hundreds of households in the last campaign, like late last year in the winter, and even at 3% rent control and just having just cause, my cat's on the table. A lot of tenants are still facing quite some difficulties. They're still being displaced, and in the wake of the pandemic, they're struggling living paycheck to paycheck. And all these laws are a big help to Hayward, but without having a registry, they remain like unenforceable. Like there's no point in having rent control if you're not gonna punish folks who violate it. And it's not only having this rent registry is not only beneficial for tenants, but even for landlords, as it will allow them to like fill their vacant units and grow their business as they can find prospective tenants.
Okay, thank you. Next caller is Hannah Tinsley.
Hi, thank you. My name's Hannah Tinsley. I'm a Hayward resident. I bought my home here about 3.5 years ago and just generally have a lot of interest in housing and community economic development. I agree with what the last caller said, and I just wanted to also voice my enthusiasm for the inclusion of the rent registry in the strategic plan. I also strongly believe that we can't address the housing crisis without information and data, and it would just be really a source of pride for me as a Hayward resident, as it would put us up as a leader in the Bay Area, up there with Berkeley and San Jose, who have enacted a registry, and other cities who are exploring the idea. There are tons of benefits, I think, for it. For the city, they're very strong. It improves communication and outreach to landlords and tenants, provides access to better information on the housing ecosystem, improves data and enforcement of various codes and ordinances. And then, of course, it's very helpful for tenants and landlords, as it helps communication between them, provides easier access to mediation, and could even improve access to public grants and resources like ARPA funding. So for all of these reasons and what the previous callers have said as well, I just hope that the rent registry remains on this strategic plan, and thank you for getting it to this point. Thanks.
Thank you. And then our next speaker is Kay.
I appreciate, as a resident, you're having a strategic road plan, of which housing is a part of. I'd like to know how many of you are homeowners here on the City Council, including the mayor. No one wants to answer. As you are aware, not just this city, but the whole state of California, and probably a lot of other places in the nation, are having serious housing challenges. What I hope for the city of Hayward is that it does not become to look like the city of Oakland, being its own state, looking like a third world country when it comes to homelessness on its own streets. I don't hope to see that for Hayward. If you ask the public who's now renting, would they rather be renters or homeowners? The majority, the vast majority, would say home ownership. Gears need to be changed in your thinking. The very few rich who are now buying up all these properties don't need to be any richer and don't need to own any more land or any more homes or apartment buildings. If you want to truly solve the problem of home ownership, of homelessness and poverty, especially for those who you claim you want to help with affordable housing, home ownership mortgages are cheaper than rent, as you are all aware. Home ownership mortgages don't increase every year exponentially to become unaffordable. They stay at a set payment for 30 years, giving people the ability to achieve stability, growth, and development. If you truly say you want to change homelessness, then that's where your thinking needs to be. That's not science, that's not magic, it's fact. Please operate in facts and stop enriching those who don't need to be enriched anymore and who are creating havoc in this nation, in this city, and in this society. And then we'd have less crime.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to close public comment, and then Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted to actually ask a question. So just to confirm, the white rows are ones we're moving forward with, in the gray is what we are reviewing, asking questions about, just trying to confirm.
Yeah, so the white ones were ones that were on staff's project list to begin with. And so, yes, they're, for the most part, the staff is just confirming that they're on staff's project list. The gray ones were comments that came up at the February 10th retreat, and so this is staff's comments back to you. And you know, in some cases where we are saying that we will add this to the list, and in other cases saying that staff is not recommending adding this as a standalone project, but
Okay.
we're noting the comment.
Okay, so one question I have about one that I believe it's I'll just say the number SP12. Can't recall it whether it's white or gray. Are we exploring still making 24 hours part of the HEART program as part of this item?
So we have that transitioning it from a pilot to a permanent program, which would be looking at funding sources, and I'm sure there will be additional work sessions related to that. We do not explicitly call out making it 24 hours here.
Sorry, HEART is Hayward Emergency and Response Team.
And I think we've had that conversation with the council before, that the challenge with making it 24 hours is that the service providers that are taking the referrals are not open 24 hours yet. So staff is continuing to explore it, and when it becomes, I think the biggest thing is making sure we have the permanent funding source to continue the program, and that you'll see that as part of this year's budget, and a transition and adding some more permanent staffing there. But again, staff will continue to monitor when it would be appropriate to consider expanding hours and or changing it to 24 hours.
Okay, I just don't want it to get lost.
It is not lost.
Okay.
It's definitely on the radar screen.
Okay, and then for EP5, well, I think it's is it EP or ED? But continuing to open for business program, or can we continue that item as well? And then focusing on small businesses particularly?
One second, I'm getting to my page. EP5 is the ARPA
Yes.
funded, open for business. So that is on staff's work plan, and they will continue that. Is there something specific you wanted to highlight
I
for
was
them?
going to ask what happens when there's no ARPA funds.
That there is no additional funding to continue the program.
So with the staff, can they make a recommendation back to council if they want to continue the program once ARPA funds run out.
I will make a note of that to pass on to our economic development team to bring up at the CEDC.
Okay, that would be good. And then there was also another item I was going to bring up that was in the gray. Oh, the working group, the downtown working group was in the gray.
It is, and that one we are adding as a project.
Yeah. Okay. And then given the comments on the previous item, making sure that homelessness is part of that item as well.
Yes, I believe that team is part of the working group, so thanks. Thank you.
Councilmember Zermenio.
Thank you, Mayor. Mary, thank you very much. A good report. Can you go to your third slide, please?
Yes.
I think it's the third one, where they list the three.
This one?
The three major items. That one, yes.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about number one, street vendor enforcement, because it's a good driver of our economy in the sense that if we control the folks who are street vending, then our bona fide restaurants and eateries actually are able to do better, and that is good for our economy. Number two, vacant property enforcement. If we can start working on that to ensure that empty storefronts are now utilized, that again is a good driver for our economy, and that I think is my particular preference, and I'm hoping that my colleagues also feel that that's also an important part of it. Number three, we approved 3 dispensaries and we only have 1, so there's obviously something amiss there. I've spoken to one who still is looking for a place to put a dispensary, but she keeps running into problems. So, but we have 1, okay. So that's why number 3 doesn't really excite me at all. But number 1, number 2, very, very important in my mind. And then over on, I do agree, I do like the points that you make on the staff report, and I do have just one comment on page 4. It is page 4, where it speaks about the added projects. The very last one speaks of the cinema place on April 29th, which includes any follow-up steps and possible report. I want to take away the word possible. I want a report. I don't want, not possible.
So you want, for sure, there a report to be to council on any
every report.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, please.
So, to clarify for everyone, this is the city manager, McAdoo, will be doing a report for the Council Economic Development Committee, talking about visioning for Cinema Place, and then the request is to have it go to the full council. So, we can amend that wording.
Yes, I need to hear what's going on with Cinema Place, and I'm sure my colleagues also. Let's see, and those are my comments. Everything else is very good. Thank you for the survey, done well, and the comments that you included. So thanks again.
Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Ms. Thomas, for the report. It is difficult to see, I mean, how much there is to do and how we do prioritize these, these topics. And so I appreciate you coming back to us to ask for that prioritization. I did want to ask, what is the more bang for our buck as far as like enforcing the street vendor ordinance versus enforcing vacant property? Because I agree with Councilmember Zermenio that obviously this is a big issue, but the county has a big lift here. I mean, especially when it comes to the food vendors. I mean, they're really part of this enforcement. So what is a better allocation of our staff time? I mean, I don't know. I know you're not necessarily prepared to ask that question, but to answer the prioritization at this point, I just wonder. I mean, street vendors are everywhere. Like, we're obviously not possibly going to get to them all, but our vacant, properties, they're more, stationary, I guess. Is that the right word? So I don't know. I guess to answer that question, I'm just wondering, do we have any more information on that?
Yeah, and I don't know, Miriam, if Director Bowser is still, she would be probably the best person to answer that. And if she's not here, then I would say perhaps might be useful is to have that division, the code enforcement division with Sarah Bowser, write a short memo for council explaining what the enforcement looks like for each of these items and how much staff time that takes. In addition to, these are the same code inspectors that are dealing with the day-to-day code complaints that come in, as well as our rental inspections, and they will become more busy in the coming months with fireworks enforcement. So they're stretched pretty thin. So if that's useful, we could perhaps have her do a memo.
Well, yeah, I mean, just as far as prioritizing, because if that's going to be, you know, just a drop in the bucket to try to enforce that, but we can get more done with vacant property enforcement, I guess I would be interested in that. And again, you know, maybe the effort should just be in, you know, I think I've asked this before, but an Access Hayward link that goes directly to the county, like, so we're at least facilitating that, you know, through our resources that we have. And then, so, because I think, you know, like, and I have said, I think it's in one of the priorities that, you know, if we could just prioritize, for example, the large open grills where, you know, so neighbors are sort of accosted by the smoke that comes into the apartments, if we could do that, but that's a county enforcement issue. That's not a city enforcement issue. So maybe if we just facilitated that for now, and then, you know, do the vendor enforcement as we can, as we get calls, but prioritize the vacant property enforcement. I mean, I don't want to create any more staff time on that. I'm just trying to help find a way to bump up one or the other. Yeah, and then, yeah, I was interested in the downtown working group, but Councilmember Andrews asked that question and it was answered. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilmember Syro.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mary, for this report and for guiding us through this process. Quick question just around the downtown working group. So is this a subcommittee of the Economic Development Committee? I just want to understand.
No, it's a staff working group that has basically come together to put together a 100-day action plan to address some of the break-ins that have been happening in downtown, some of the key issues, the double parking for door dashers. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. And so basically just to create some sort of key strategies that we can really work quickly on as a staff team to sort of help address some of those issues.
Thank you. You know, we received some comment around there being difficulty with building code enforcement for tenants, and just reflecting back some of the comments we heard tonight. Both the sidewalk vendor ordinance and the vacant property ordinance are addressing our economy more so than specifically the residents. Maybe this is a question for Director Bowser, but I am curious, is it part of the work plan for us to improve or streamline how residents are getting building code inspections if they're tenants versus a homeowner or a neighbor?
It is not part of the work plan to try and improve that. It would just be to continue the existing process. I'm sensing a lot of interest in that particular division's work and kind of what it looks like. So maybe that's something that could be a follow-up item.
Okay, great. Overall, I think this work plan makes a lot of sense. What would have been helpful maybe was seeing the full work plan for the different departments or as they relate to the different projects, because I'm seeing, for example, under community safety, most of those projects are report backs, at least what's in this attachment. I'm also very curious about the ongoing current projects they're working on. I know that the police department, for example, is going through an assessment. Is that currently still part of the work plan with Jensen and Hughes?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, and we just kicked that off a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so I'm in support of that plan. I just wasn't sure if this is all that was going to be worked on this year or if this is just in response to what we had commented on before.
There is a whole host of other projects. These are just the projects that have been identified as council priorities. So there's a lot of work other than just these items.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate my ask around, I don't know what number it was specifically, but there was an item around streamlining the cannabis permitting process. I see this as being grouped in with revisiting specific ordinances that might be limiting our economic growth. We have a cabaret ordinance that prevents us from having dancing in places that serve alcohol. I feel like that's a little outdated and limits our growth as a city and potential recreational activities for young adults and older adults and all kinds of people. I know that's prioritized as number 3 on, would you mind pulling up the slide again? So I know this is prioritized as number 3 here. I'm wondering if number 2 fits into the downtown working group at all, and whether or not there's a lot of staff overlap there, so it doesn't make a difference if I suggest that that maybe number 3 gets bumped to number 2 and 2 is a priority of that working group?
Yes, sort of.
Okay.
I think we'd need to look at it. You know, we can identify the ordinances that have adverse impacts. It's the follow-up work that I think is the real impact on staff, because that will require planning staff time, which is very limited at this point.
Okay, understood. And then I just want to echo Councilmember Roach's points about maybe how we go about prioritizing. Can we go back to the previous slide? I think it was around vendors. Yes. Yeah, I would edge vacant property enforcement a little bit higher here just to help with the prioritization and really rely on the county around street vendor enforcement. I think some of the methods that Councilmember Roach suggested make a lot of sense to me. I think that concludes my comments. Overall, I think this is a great step forward, and I'm excited to see all these ideas incorporated into our work plan. Thank you.
Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Assistant City Manager. This has been a great report, very comprehensive. I think we have a pretty solid work plan across our city, but as you see, City Council has a lot of priorities, so I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're prioritizing, and that's what today is about. So when I was thinking about the code enforcement, I agree with my colleagues. I think that, you know, the vacant property edges a bit higher than the street vendor ordinance from my perspective, especially because, as Councilmember Roche so eloquently said, the county does have a very big role to play when it comes to the street vendor enforcement. You know, I know that our first step with them is going to be, you know, education, and then, you know, we'll move through that whole process. But I do think that we need to, you know, make sure that we are maximizing the limited resources that we have available and not necessarily stepping in someone else's space. So if we do want the street vendor ordinance enforced, we should probably work with the county to see how we do that in partnership. But I think the things that are probably more directly under our purview that I think will have some pretty significant impacts are around our vacant property enforcement. I think we've heard that from our businesses and from our residents. So I definitely would prioritize that amongst these three. But then the tobacco and cannabis enforcement, I want to separate that, you know, in my own mind from streamlining the ordinance. You know, we have some requirements, you know, around where tobacco can and can't be used, apartment complexes and other things like that. And I do think that it's a health and safety issue, so I would prioritize that as well. You know, is something that we need to make sure we're adhering to. But then as it relates to sort of the economic development and planning requirements, I sort of thought if we were able to identify the ordinances that have an adverse impact, and then we can prioritize which of those ordinances do we want to go after changing first, maybe that could, you know, get us to figuring out how small businesses and pop-ups in residential areas can work, because right now they're prevented by ordinances, right? So if we were to say, what are all of the ordinances that are having this adverse impact, and not saying let's go tackle them all with the same urgency, but then bringing that back to council to say, how do we want to tackle that? Because perhaps there's things we can do from an ordinance perspective that will help us revitalize our downtown for a mid-sized city, right? So I'm almost thinking, you know, all of these are very important, but I almost think that really understanding what's standing in our way in terms of the law and ordinances is probably the enabler to getting to some of these other things that we want to get on the list. Because I think in order to address number 1 and 2, we're going to have to talk about the ordinances that are preventing us from doing that. So at any rate, I do, you know, support kind of ordinances that are, you know, adversely impacting our community as my, you know, number 1 here, but number 1 as an enabler to get to the other priorities on the list. And other than that, I think we have a very solid work plan. Perhaps one recommendation going forward is I liked the, you know, the kind of white line is the thing that we're moving forward with, and the gray lines are the things that we're kind of here talking a little bit about tonight. But some of the gray things we're actually moving forward with already, you know, so it would just be good to kind of represent that so the community sees how staff is being able to optimize their impact to create the biggest and broadest positive effect for our community across all of our strategic priority areas. So really good to be here tonight to be having this conversation, and I hope the community is as impressed with, how, number one, responsive we are. We want to make sure that we're hearing what the community's needs are, and we're being responsive to putting programs and initiatives in place that address those, and I think the work in front of us tonight really does demonstrate that. So thank you again for this great report and for shepherding this work for us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Andrews has a short comment.
Very short. For SB 7 for public safety, I wanted to see if we can add discussing mail, dealing with mail theft. That has been an issue that keeps coming up to council, but also we just need a coordinated way to deal with the federal government on how to address it and making sure our planning is looking at that. And then also, I know Councilmember Syrup is really interested in dog waste solutions. I know that's not really prioritized here, but I do think we can partner with HARD and HUSD to get some of those big areas where there is a lot of dog walking. And then just one quick question: How do residents complain about building code issues in their apartments? Can they actually do it on Access Hayward? Is that part of it?
It's a code enforcement response.
It is a code enforcement. Okay, so maybe there's some outreach that needs to happen on how to make sure that the residents know that is an opportunity for the actual item to be tracked in Access Hayward, so they make sure we respond. Thank you.
And can I just respond on the mailbox theft? So I know the Postal Service is exploring a pilot program right now. So the issue is there are 6, as I understand it, 6 master keys for all communal mailboxes in the entire United States. So as soon as one gets stolen and copied, it's easy to break into mailboxes. So the Postal Service has they're moving to RFID, so more automated entry for their the postal workers to deliver mail. But it's the federal government and it's a pilot program, so we only could know how long that will take. But I think, I think lobbying our federal representatives to push that pilot program faster and implement it so that technology can be utilized for communal mailboxes, and then incorporating that into planning conditions of approval as soon as it's available. So that would be how I would recommend addressing, instead of trying to deal with the current issue, which, other than trying to figure out how to do some, design, environmental design, protect, putting mailboxes inside of secured rooms for residents, things like that, or cameras, things like that, but focusing on the advocacy on getting that pilot program implemented.
That's something Townsend can probably help us with. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I just had a couple of comments I want to make. One, I'm in general agreement with everyone up here. I think, the priorities that we're working on, I think we're on track. Simultaneously, we must be mindful of, in a few weeks, we're going to be meeting in our annual sort of budget conference. So some of our budget Saturday. And so some of these priorities may shift, they may move around a little bit, but so I just want us to sort of stay open to that. Once we look at our budget priorities, that oftentimes is coupled closely with our strategic priorities. So just wanted us to sort of be mindful of that. Also, I also wanted to I know Ms. Thomas is working, she's working with the mayor's group on with the Harvard group, and so a lot of the items and the issues that you are prioritizing, I know that the Harvard group is working through some of these issues, and we're doing it. We're putting together sort of a data infrastructure that we can start to calibrate down into. We're going to pilot in one neighborhood. But once we have a robust data system that we can, calibrate resources and calibrate other priorities in particular areas. So a lot of the stuff that has been said, a lot of the priorities everyone's mentioning around, public safety and housing and some of these things, a lot of that is going to get covered through that process. So. But I did want to just highlight, and it comes at no surprise that on your slide 3, the famous slide 3, where the priority is the 3 priorities, but the 2 priorities that were tied was street vending and and vacant properties. And I'll tell you, this weekend, just to kind of a little caveat, little context. This weekend on Saturday, I was at the Keep Hayward Cleaning Green, the citywide cleanup, and it was a nice day. It was sunny, and I was driving around picking up trash and stuff. And I turned on Huntwood and Latig streets over there. And right there on the corner, on both sides of the street, you had street vendors, and they were on the dirt part up against the train tracks. The back was against the train tracks, and of course, on the other side of the street, in that little triangle area, they were all there. They were 5 or 6 tent deep. Tents. They were full-blown restaurants in there. They had kitchens, they had seating, they had all this stuff. Same thing over on Tampa and Tennyson, right in front of Chavez grocery store. There was another street vendor there with a single tent, but had tables all along the sidewalk, on the sidewalk. That's clearly against the ordinance that we passed. And those are just 2 of some of the most egregious ones I saw. There's another one, I have seen it before, but there's another one over on West Winton where there's a lady, there's a person selling sandwiches on the sidewalk with about 4 tables in front of a sandwich shop, right? And the sandwiches inside the building are about $9, $10 a sandwich, and then she's selling sandwiches for $5 or $4 or $5. A Street. You drive down A Street, and you have now we're seeing taco trucks illegally parked on A Street, literally a car length away from the person who has, a barbecuer. And, I'm a barbecuer, but the billowing of smoke across A Street it has gotten a bit much. And of course, I know we've all seen it on the corner of Hathaway and A Street in front of Costco, again, right on the sidewalk, where this one has at least 3 to 4 tents deep, wide, with full tables, and then across the street on Santa Clara and A Street. There's one of the, and so there's that. Another observation I made, particularly on Saturday, this was the one observation I made, is the street vendors on Tampa and Tennyson and over there on Latig and Huntwood, all of the plates, the cups, everything that they were serving food in and on, it was styrofoam. They had a mountain, they had a table just for plates and tray. Everything was styrofoam. That was clearly against another ordinance, that we have. And so, and I just, and I heard, Councilmember Roach, and I get it. This is a multi-layered, problem. But the county, the way I look at it is the county only has sort of one responsibility in this. That is food, the food safety, right? We control permit, we control the business license, and to be there, they need to get a permit and they need to have a business license, and they need to, and in fact, when we did our ordinance on street vending, we did the ordinance with the goal to help them transition from street vending to a brick and mortar. And I know that's not going to happen overnight, and I get it. I say that because we need to do something immediately regarding street vendors. They're increasingly, not only increasing in numbers, but their operations are increasing. And the county's not going to, yes, I've seen some emails over the last, month or so about the county. I don't even think the county has generated, I don't know how far along they are with an ordinance. I know that they're hearing something in the next few weeks or the next week or so. And I don't know what's going to come about there. But I think all of us up here, when the street vending ordinance came, we did it in partnership with restaurant owners in the city. We did it with there were some neighborhood stakeholders involved. So it was an ordinance that wasn't punitive. It wasn't, we weren't, actively going to go out and immediately enforce the day after. And I think we have been doing education. I think, code enforcement has been out there doing education. But what I'm seeing now is just, they're growing. Weather's getting better, and we're seeing not only them grow in numbers, but we're seeing them grow in size. And so, I would really urge my colleagues up here that we really need to pivot now from education to enforcement. And I've had conversations with the police chief. I don't want to see, when we go out and do enforcement, I understand that, I don't want sort of there's going to be a public optic, right? I don't want to see, there's going to be, videos taken where, you're going to have code enforcement or others, citing or, asking people to close down, and and I can only imagine what that looks like, but we need to somehow empower staff to get a handle on this, because if we don't make this a priority, they're going to keep growing, and they're going to keep growing in size, and without really any regard with the other ordinances that we're trying to, it was Earth Day, and there was styrofoam. Not that I'm the styrofoam police, but I'm just saying that there's clearly no attention being paid to other ordinances, and so. And we're getting emails. I get emails regularly. I don't know. I'm sure you guys are getting them too. But, I think we really need to figure out a way to pivot from where we are at now. I don't think we can wait for the county, to be quite honest with you. But we really need to figure out a way to empower staff to make the pivot from education to enforcement. Because if we don't get a handle on this, it's going to get, it may get big where, it may be too difficult to stem in the future. So, I understand, about, some of the other priorities, but at least in the short term, we really need to get a grip on street vending. So, that's what I'm sort of putting out there right now. Councilmember Cermeño.
And I agree with you 100%. I have cleaned a lot in that particular area, and behind them I have run into bags of spoiled chicken or uncooked chicken. And if you were to have gone down a little bit north on Leydig and Huntwood. There are 10 people out there. So what will happen is we're going to be losing more and more restaurants, and that's really something that I don't want to lose because that's going to hurt our bottom line. I just don't understand how some of the restaurants are still open. La Chaparrita, which has excellent tacos, by the way, at Leydig and Tennyson, is still open. I don't know how they do it. I just have no idea. Jorge Flores from Don Polvorón is still open. It calls me every 2 weeks. Can you help me? Can you help me? They're selling tamales right outside his door. So we really, I joined our mayor in recommending that we all really put our foot down on this and start really going out there. Maybe having one code enforcer specifically devoted for this particular task. I don't know what it will take, but thank you for that point.
Yeah, and I also want to, I want to just reemphasize that when we did this ordinance, the street vending ordinance, we did it with the idea that with enforcement, and I just want to sort of, and we knew that we weren't going to, it wasn't going to be, sort of a heavy-handed enforcement. We we're empathetic. We're going to do this with, with understanding, with sort of what they're doing, and and we get it. We understand sort of the context of street vendors. Notwithstanding, I think when we did the ordinance, we did it because we did it in partnership with restaurants. We did it in partnership with with other neighborhood stakeholders, and I think the ordinance that we did, I think it was a good ordinance. It was a good ordinance, and I thought that we could that we would be implementing really soon. So hopefully, Ms. Thomas, that.
Yeah, I do want to mention that just because we were asking for you to prioritize, there has been an interdepartmental task force formed, and they are already doing some enforcement. But one of the things that Director Bowser is going to do is provide a memo for you on what that looks like and some of the challenges they may be facing when doing enforcement. So you'll be getting that.
Okay. Okay. That being said, thank you very much. And great presentation. Thank you for, giving us more stuff to look at. Thank you very much. Okay, I would like to close that item and move on to item number 11. Before we move on to item number 11, let me ask the council. You guys want to take a 5-minute break, 7-minute break to? Madam City Clerk, can we take a 7-minute break and then? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
So once everyone comes back to the dais, we'll get started. All right, let's get started. Let's get started because I know.
Recording in progress.
Let's get started because I know the Community Services Commission. They're just waiting. They're waiting. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the Community Services Commission for giving us a little bit of latitude up here. Okay. Ready? Okay. All right. Thank you. I'd like to move on to our public hearing. This is item number 11. This is our community agency funding. This is the approval of the fiscal year 2025 community agency funding recommendations and the fiscal year 2025 annual action plan. And I believe the report will come to us by way of Assistant City Manager Youngblood. And let's see if she's... But I see Emily Huang online.
Yeah, Assistant City Manager Youngblood is out, so I can kick us off. I'm Amy Colbloom. I'm the Community Services Manager. Emily will give you the bulk of the presentation tonight, but I wanted to address just a couple little process elements. I wanted to acknowledge, just for transparency, that we were inconsistent in our implementation of the conflict of interest and recusal process during the work session from what we've done in prior years. So we've consulted with the City Attorney's Office, and we're going to replicate what we did last year. So what that means is that, particularly for Councilmembers Domenyo and Mayor Salinas, you don't need to recuse yourselves from this discussion and vote. Just like all the other folks with a potential conflict, you can just verbally disclose and acknowledge that doesn't impact your decision making. And then I also wanted to acknowledge we received feedback at the last work session to give a little bit more context. So we do have a couple extra slides tonight just to do some of that context setting, and we appreciate the opportunity to do so. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily, who is online.
Thanks, Amy. Just doing a sound check. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, Council. My name is Emily Huang. I'm Management Analyst with the Community Services Division, and I appreciate your time and attention tonight this evening. Before anything else, we want to do some context setting for what's been done up until this point for the community agency funding process as requested by Council, and also to inform the public. The process began in September with the publication of the Notice of Funding Availability, and later in November, staff hosted the annual Bidders Conference, which provides an overview of the application and reviews the RFP with potential applicants. Staff answers any questions and is available to assist the agencies with their applications up until December 1st due date. Between December and March, the CSC reviewed, interviewed, and deliberated the applications and funding amounts. The CSC also held their own public comment period, and then they voted for funding recommendations to present to Council for consideration at the end of March. These recommendations were brought to Council at the April 2nd work session, where Council received public comment and provided their input. And now we're at the tail end of the community agency funding process, where we'll be having this public hearing to respond to Council's main themes from the April 2nd Council work session, listen to any remaining public comments, and Council will approve the annual action plan and funding recommendations. This process spans across many months and also involves many people. So I just wanted to share a special thanks to the time and efforts of the Community Services Commission, who presented their recommendations at the April 2nd work session, and some of them may also be present tonight at Council. Now that we've done some context setting, we can move forward with the rest of the presentation. Council saw this slide at the April 2nd work session already. So to be brief, the priority needs and activities of the annual action plan remain consistent with the city's consolidated plan, which is updated every 5 years and was approved by council in 2020. We are still waiting on HUD to announce the fiscal year 25 entitlement award. So tonight we're asking council to adopt the action plan based off of staff estimates and the CSC's recommendations for how to allocate funding should the award exceed what we estimated. And as with prior years, when HUD was delayed in announcing our entitlement award, we will return with an amended resolution and corresponding agency-specific funding allocations, likely when council adopts the fiscal year 25 budget in June. So moving forward, this slide presents the funding recommendations by category, which is shown in more detail in attachment 2. As with last year and previous funding years, this process continues to be a competitive process. The amount being requested this year is nearly double what's available. The majority of applicants were funded, either fully or partially funded. And in the instances where applicants were not recommended for funding or were only offered partial funding, it was generally due to limited funding or established funding caps, a desire to see more plans for outreach and implementation, and also the need to spend down funds in a timely manner. So there were two main themes from the April 2nd work session that staff did want to follow up with council on. The first one being related to technical assistance. As requested by the CSC and also council, staff will continue to provide technical assistance in a variety of ways to support new and returning agencies and ensure that they are completely prepared and able to submit a competitive application. And we'll also continue to work with those who are recommended for funding to ensure that they are successfully reporting on their goals and accomplishments. We are also in the process of eliciting feedback from our applicants to gather areas of improvement through a survey we'll bring those main themes back to the CSC in the May meeting to debrief and improve this process. The other main theme from the work session was a prioritization of food security and funding to shelter providers if there is additional funding. During the deliberations process, the CSC did establish guidelines for if there is additional funding and how that funding would be allocated. In the following slides, we will cover these guidelines for each category, and they are also detailed in the attachment 2 document. For economic development and infrastructure projects, the CSC recommends for any additional funds to be spent in the following order. First, funds would go to Downtown Streets team up to $208,000 in addition to their $200,000 award. Should there be additional funds, La Familia's Family Emergency Shelter Coalition would be recommended to bump up their award to $20,000. And if there is additional funds after providing funds to those two agencies first, the CSC recommended to fund South Hayward Parish up to $83,000 in addition to what they're already receiving. Should there be any remaining amounts in this category specifically, the CSC recommended that they split the remaining amounts equally among agencies recommended for partial funding, not to exceed their request. And moving forward, the CSC also made recommendations for additional funding for the services category. Specifically on the left side, public services category funded through CDBG, the CSC recommended to allocate any additional awards evenly across the organizations that are listed on the left, not to exceed their requested amount. And for the social services funded by general fund, the CSC recommended to allocate evenly across the listed organizations, not to exceed the requested amount as shown on the right side of the slide. We don't anticipate there being any additional funding for social services as they are general fund funded, unless an agency is unable to get into contract or if council decides to allocate additional funding for general fund for this category. We only anticipate additional funding for CDBG funded categories. So now that we've covered the CSC's recommendations for if there's additional funding, we can move on to recommendations. Staff recommends that City Council approves the authorization of the CDBG fiscal year 25 annual action plan submission, to approve the CDBG funding allocations estimates for fiscal year 25, and to also approve the general fund funding allocations for fiscal year 2025. And before we go into discussion, I can briefly review our next steps for this process. So the public comment period for the annual action plan will still be available up until May 2nd, and the public can send comments to the listed email here. After the public comment period does close, we will plan to submit the annual action plan. This is currently tentative still because we haven't received our HUD award entitlement amount. But once we get that amount, we will return to council with an amended resolution and funding attachment, ideally at the June budget adoption. And with that, we can move forward to the discussion process.
Thank you. That was really good. Appreciate that. Okay, so I'd like to start up here and see. Let me check my council member Andrews. No? Oh, this is old. Oh, let me actually, maybe if I jump down here. No. Okay. Okay, so seeing none. Okay, let me make sure. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, I'm not, okay. Councilmember Syra.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Emily. I think a few of the council members up here last time also discussed how we might grow the amount of funding that is available in our general fund for different community agency funded projects. And I was curious from your perspective, or maybe from the city manager's perspective, when's the best time for us to have that conversation, especially as, maybe not for this upcoming fiscal year, but the following one, since our requests are going up over time?
I think, the council obviously is considering placing a renewal of Measure C on the ballot. I think sort of looking at the financial projections, if and when that does get approved by the voters, and sort of what are all of the needs that are on the plate, and really doing, I would suggest maybe a more strategic session where you look at facility needs, some of these other social service needs, kind of what were the priorities that the community mentioned in the survey and the discussions that we've been having with them. And that would be my recommendation is, so maybe it's next spring sometime as you're kind of thinking about where we are at that point.
Okay, that makes sense. Just because as I'm looking at the amount of funding that we've had available that's remained steady for approximately the last 5 to 10 years, and we think about unlocking or making funds available for community needs now, I'm wondering if there's some relationship between vacancies that we're experiencing across different departments and having some kind of policy where a certain percentage of that goes towards community needs in the short term. Of course, as vacancy savings can be carried over, but I just want us to be creative about using money on the table to address the needs in the present, and we can have this conversation at a future time. I just wanted to put that out there. And then my last question is, do we want to make some room to invite some of the commissioners that attended tonight to maybe add additional comment to? I just see some in the audience. They have public comment. Okay, I wasn't sure if they were part of the presentation. All right, then that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so seeing no other questions, go to public comment, and I believe we have the chair of the CAC, Austin Bruckner Carrillo.
Aha, a tablet fits there. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, City staff, members of the public. My name is Austin Bruckner Carrillo, and I have the honor of serving as chair for the City of Hayward's Community Services Commission, where I have the opportunity to work alongside 16 dedicated colleagues who serve on an unpaid basis while dedicating time to improve our community as outlined within our bylaws. Tonight, I ask that Council approve the recommendations before you, and that these requests, to really acknowledge that these requests have been thoroughly vetted by the various subcommittees, or as we call them in CSC land, our ARCs, as well as by the entire CSC Commission twice, as well as prior to the ARCs meeting through the online vetting process. As chair, I have appointed 3 experienced and deeply committed colleagues to serve as the chairs of each ARC, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge those fine folks tonight. Chairing our Economic Development Infrastructure ARC is Colin Thuramoto, who is here in the audience today. Chairing our Arts and Music ARC is Jesse Gunn, who is joining us via Zoom as he cares for his family. And then chairing the Services ARC is Linda Moore, who is here in the audience today. For those that don't know, obviously everyone here does, but for members of the public, Linda also serves as the vice chair for the CSC, a role I said she must serve in if I was going to be chair, because Linda is wonderful. There are surely members of the CSC on Zoom, and I want to thank them for their service as well. I'm here this evening as chair to answer any larger questions that you may have about the process, but I really encourage council to utilize the chairs of each ARC. They were in those active discussions. I want to thank Dr. Kohlblum and her staff for their work on this process, and I want to thank the applicants and organizations for going through this timely process. As someone who runs a grassroots organization myself, one that runs around my kitchen table, I encourage council to do anything that they can to make this process easier for small nonprofits doing innovative work to uplift our community. I encourage council to look at ways that we can address duplication of service among these organizations, and more specifically, collaboration opportunities with our partners on existing elected bodies. I want to conclude my remarks by really kind of centering why we do this work. For those of you that may know, I actually grew up relying on many of these services myself. For a brief period of time, we lived in a park ran by East Bay Regional Park District. We lived at a FESCO shelter. The food that was in my fridge, when there was food in that fridge, it often came from a food pantry. I relied on Echo Housing as a much younger adult when I lived in a poorly ran corporate rental development right across from Hard. I was able to continue living in our community only because I was lucky enough to do a first-time homebuyer program. These programs work, and I really want to thank council for taking the time, the energy, and most importantly, the money to invest in these programs. I want to thank my colleagues on the CSC. I want to thank Dr. Kohlblum again and her staff, and good evening.
Thank you. And absolutely, you and your colleagues have done some, yet again, some extraordinary work. And I know she's been on the commission for a while, Commissioner Moore, and I was going to refer to you as sort of the dean of the commission, but you've been there for some time now, so thank you very much. Our next speaker is Kay.
I'm pleased and happy to hear that you have these programs, and I hope you put a whole lot of it, or quite a bit of it, into home ownership to prevent homelessness. And in addition, I'd like you to consider, and I appreciate your concern for the street vendors, and you're wanting to find a solution. May I make an offer of a solution? Is to use some of these funds to help with and think of supportive facilitation transitioning. So my suggestion is, and it's worked in several other places before, instead of your intended code enforcement, I think earlier on today in this meeting, you mentioned vacant properties and buildings. How about putting some of these funds into those vacant properties and buildings to provide these vendors who are not criminals, who are trying to make an honest living. Instead of frustrating them with code enforcement, how about helping to be supportive, facilitating, and transitioning them by using these properties and buildings to afford them affordable rent to be businesses in these places, setting up new economic street vending zones that would generate these vendors paying rent to the city and generating sales tax. I think that's a much better solution in helping these people stay being honest, hardworking citizens trying to make a living, instead of the city using the opposite of code enforcement to frustrate them and almost which would probably put them out of business, creating more stress in them, creating more problems instead of creating solutions. I think what I just suggested is a better solution to think of and a better use of your time in making your citizens and its residents productive and keeping them productive. Please consider it seriously. If you have all these vacant buildings and you're not getting people who can afford to rent them, pay big time rent, you can convert them into small cubicles or whatever for these vendors to do their business legally and the way you like with your code enforcements, honoring your code enforcements. Please.
Thank you. Seeing no more public comment, I'd like to close public comment and come back up here, and I will entertain a motion.
May I?
The floor is yours right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I think my speaker button's not working, but in any event. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I just want to acknowledge the great work that the CSE has done and that staff has done. It is, by the time they present us with this sheet of their recommendations, all of the work has been done. And so the sheet doesn't really reflect the hours and hours of deliberations that have gone into it, the research that's gone into it, the interviews, and all of the other background work that has to happen in order to make a project of this size come to fruition. And I think in the future what we're going to do is just try to keep a tally of all of the hours and the numbers of people and the project, so that when it gets to this point, we can properly acknowledge the tremendous effort that you folks have put into this. And not just the effort, but the thought process, and the excellent results that you've produced from this are really fantastic. And I really just want to tell you what an honor and a privilege it's been to be the council liaison, watching how you deliberate, watching the ideas that you bring forward and the thoughtfulness that you bring forward, the recommendations and so forth. I just got to tell you, you've done an outstanding job. Thank you, Mayor.
So are you going to move it?
Yes. I would like to move this.
Okay. So moved by Councilmember Goldstein. Second by Councilmember Bonilla. And does the seconder want to have a comment?
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. First, I just wanted to say thank you to the chair of the CSC for your eloquent comments tonight and for your dedication to this process that's clearly demonstrated through the service that you bring to this commission. Also want to thank the vice chair and the chairs of all of the ARCs. It was certainly a pleasure working with Commissioner Moore when I had the pleasure of serving on the Community Services Commission for about 6 years, so it's so good to see your commitment to this work continuing to persevere. And as the chair of the services ARC, which is arguably one of the most challenging ARCs because you're dealing with a huge set of community needs and limited resources, it's good to know that these recommendations were in good hands and good leadership of you, Ms. Moore. So thank you for being here and for your continued commitment to ensuring that we're meeting the needs of our community by matching appropriately the funding that's available with the needs and Colin, thank you for all of your work on the commission as well. You know, the voice that you bring and the lens of equity that you make sure is used as we make these decisions, I think only benefits everybody in the community as these recommendations move forward. It's clear that there's been robust and thoughtful recommendations that have been brought for us tonight. But what's also clear is how hard this work is. When you see over $3 million of need and $1.5 million available, it really does take, you know, thoughtfulness, it takes prioritization, it takes understanding our community needs. It also takes, you know, rigorous evaluation of all of those that are out there that want to meet those needs and making sure that we're aligning the best service providers to provide the services in Hayward. As the mayor says, Hayward deserves the best, and I think your recommendations really do highlight that. I'm fully supportive of moving forward the annual plan and these funding recommendations, and I also agree with the methodology and the recommendations that have been put forth and how additional funding might be allocated should that become available. I also agree that sometimes going through these government funding processes could be daunting and could be challenging. So continuing to provide technical assistance, continuing to listen to the community to identify where there were roadblocks and where, you know, maybe we can streamline the process to make it easier for applicants to apply, because, you know, the real goal here is to make sure that we're matching the services with the needs of our communities, and the application process certainly shouldn't be a hurdle in making that happen. So I appreciate, you know, us providing technical assistance and continuing to do that. And I also appreciate, you know, kind of the collaboration between the council and the Community Services Commission to make sure that as additional funds become available, we're prioritizing those where the community is asking us to, and that's certainly in the space of food and shelter. So again, just really impressed with the thoughtfulness of these recommendations. I know these recommendations don't come before us quickly. It's a labor of love, and you guys have certainly put in the work that makes me feel very comfortable seconding these recommendations tonight. So thank you again to you, those of you here tonight. Thanks for the community for being so involved and engaged and wanting to meet the needs of Hayward. And thank you for the full CSC for your ongoing commitment to improving community services in Hayward. So feel very comfortable moving this forward, and thanks for the opportunity, Mayor, and thanks thanks Councilmember Goldstein for your work as the liaison to this commission.
Nice, thank you. Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. Yeah, I am happy to support the motion here, of course. First of all, thank you to our CSC members who are here in the chamber and lasted through this very long meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kohlblum, Ms. Wang, for the work that you did in supporting the community services to get to this point. Thank you, of course, to the chair and the vice chair, who I also had the pleasure of serving with. Thank you, Linda. And to the chairs of our ARCs and all the commissioners who might be listening. Thank you. Your diligent work during this funding cycle and all the heavy lifting that you did is to get to this recommendation is just to be commended. I thank you. It's kind of what we ask of you, and you do that and more. And I think it was the mayor's point that said, so many hours have been put into this. It is all volunteer. I hope the public hears that this is a volunteer job, and it's a really serious one. I'm in total support of the action plan and the recommendations as you presented. Since you were the ones in the room, you had deliberations on the recommendations. You confidently defended your recommendations to council and gave us detailed information on some of the ARCs, some of the ARC discussion that happened to get to this work. And then you heard us when we gave some input based on some of the funding recommendations, should there be additional funding. So thank you. I also want to recognize, I was somebody that called out the food services category. I realized that it was at Mercy Retirement Center did get full funding, and I appreciate that. I am always in favor of funding for seniors, so thank you. And but also thanks for going back and looking at the recommendations and recommending additional funding for the food services category should there be extra available. So thank you so much for your dedication to this work. I know how hard it is, and I just really appreciate you sticking with us tonight and for all of the work that you did all year. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Zermenio.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the report over there, and thank you for being here. I do like a couple of the recommendations that the Chair Austin made, so I hope that you made note of those, colleague Goldstein. Okay, so You wrote them down. Okay, good. They were very good. So, Ms. Moore, many years. Keep going for another 50, please. All right. And Austin, please give thanks to the whole commission, please. And then, of course, to city staff, let's see if we can figure out how to get some more funds. I mean, we have a lot of needy organizations. I mean, when they request $3 million and we only have $1.5 million, there must be somewhere something along the lines. Federal funding, state funding, whatever the case may be. So thank you for a good job, well done. Thank you, Collie Goldstein, for helping them and being there when they need. And next year should be even better. Thanks.
Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep my comments brief. I know it's quite late tonight, and we've already kept you for too long, but a heartfelt thank you to the commissioners. I had a brief stint on the commission, and I miss it. And I was a little bummed that I didn't get to be the liaison, but you're obviously in good hands with Councilmember Goldstein here. Thank you to the commissioners listening online, and thank you, Dr. Cole Bloom, and to the rest of your team as well. Conducting this process is no easy feat, and I know there were some transitions over the last year and a half around staffing too, so it's just phenomenal to see you grow into this process and really execute on it. So appreciate all your work going into this. Happy to support this, of course. I think these are great recommendations. Just echoing my comment/question from before, which is we do need to find a way to grow these funds. There are always a couple $100,000 to purchase new forms of, I would say, military equipment. And I think if we could instead find a couple $100,000 to support our community that are most in need, that to me is the higher priority. So I'm hoping moving forward we can have more intentional conversations around that. But otherwise, thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you, Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Management Analyst Emily Wang and Community Services Manager Dr. Amy Cole Bloom. I know that is a lot of work before this presentation is presented to us. There are a lot of meetings, conversations, hand-holding, and we appreciate all your work in helping our organizations be successful in Hayward. Also wanted to acknowledge Chair Bruckner Carrillo, Vice Chair Moore, and Commissioners Thurmoto, and I know Commissioners Wong and Gunn called in earlier. So I just want to acknowledge all the work that goes into making these recommendations. I know it seems like a few slide deck slides and you think it's just, oh, we're just making these recommendations. I know there's a lot of meetings and a lot of conversations and probably some fights over who gets this funding. So thank you so much for all that. I just wanted to highlight a couple of folks that are getting funds, and I'm very happy to hear that Downtown Streets team is getting funds. They have been a great partner in our community, and one of those organizations that do a lot of the community services arcs in just one organization. So I'm happy to see that they're getting a robust amount of funding because they do focus on family reunification, substance abuse treatment, job reentry, and they help clean up our streets. So they do a lot of good there. So thank you for acknowledging their efforts and supporting them. I also would like staff to revisit the Peace Haven. I know they have a site downtown, and I'm hoping possibly with the downtown working group we can look at their operations and see what support they need in order to be successful, but also kind of minimize some of the impacts we're seeing downtown. So I think they need a little bit more support, whether it's more funds, or technical assistance. I really want to look at that location because it's in a crucial area on A Street. That's one organization I would like to see some support on. But outside of that, this is a great list of folks to support. I also want to double tap on a lot of what the council members have said about food. I'm hoping with the food action plan, there can be more coordination with the commission so we can see how do we address all the different, I know the mayor mentioned that the space is really crowded on giving food access, but how can we be coordinated, but also give the commission some cover on how much money we can actually contribute to solve that problem? Because I know that was some feedback that you heard, but you only have limited funds and there's so many organizations going after it. So how can we better address food access in Hayward? So I'm hoping that with the food action plan and the commission that there would be better coordination. So look forward to making making the vote for supporting these recommendations. Thank you.
Commissioner Moore, I'm going to save 10 minutes tonight. Madam City Clerk, if you can call the vote.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you could do it via the iPad, so let me go ahead and
Then let's vote.
let's see if we could try.
There you go.
Okay.
And the item passes 7-0. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, our next item is our legislative business item, and hopefully our city manager doesn't take this personal. We have the council appointed officers employment agreement, adopt a resolution approving a new employment agreement between the City of Hayward and the interim city manager, and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement. And this is going to come to us by way of our Human Resources Director, Brittany Fry.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and council members. We are asking council to adopt a resolution approving a new employment agreement between the City of Hayward and the interim city manager, and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement. This should be a very quick presentation because a majority of the terms of the contract for the city manager remain the same for the interim city manager. The effective date of the interim contract will be Monday, May 6th, as the current city manager, McAdoo, is leaving effective Friday, May 3rd. There is no additional fiscal impact to this item, again, because many of the terms for salary and benefits remain the same in this contract. Therefore, we are asking council to adopt the resolution approving a new employment agreement between the City of Hayward and the interim city manager, Dustin Clausen, and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement.
And we apologize that the presentation was not up on the screen. There's the,
okay.
Maybe, Ms. Fry, if you could go back one slide. I don't know that it's.
Oh, is it not sharing?
It was not, yeah, we're having some technical issues.
Okay, can you see the screen now?
No.
Nope.
Okay, I can stop sharing.
There it is.
Now we see
Stop, don't do anything.
Okay.
We've got it. Okay, perfect. That's all. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so I will start with questions from council. Councilmember Syra. Oh, no questions. All right. Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you, Mayor. The only question I have on this item, Ms. City Manager, is what's the timeline to figure out who's going to replace or what's going to happen with the assistant city manager job that's going to be open?
For the interim city manager position, Mr. Clausen and Ms. Youngblood have decided to appoint our IT director, Adam Kosterzak, to the acting assistant city manager position. So he will take on the sort of services underneath maintenance services, development services, and public works and utilities. So an interesting opportunity for him to grow and develop. And then Lisa Bolger, who is our deputy IT director, will step into the acting IT director role. And then in the interim, our library department will report to Ms. Youngblood as part of the transition.
Thank you for that. Mayor, I'm happy to move the item. Actually, I know we need to go to public comment first, sorry.
Public comment first. So, I would like to go to public comment. There is no public comment. And I'd like to return to the dais. And I want to take the chair's privilege. And I'd like to move the item. And then Councilmember Cermeño, would you like? I'll third it. Oh, okay, so I'll move the item, and then seconded by Councilmember Bonilla. Moved by Mayor Salinas, seconded by Councilmember Bonilla, and Madam City Clerk, if you can take or if we can vote.
with Councilmember Andrews.
And item passes 7-0. And congratulations, Mr. Clausen.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Move on to the, hold on. Move on to the next item on the agenda is council reports and announcements. Are there any council reports and announcements? I have one. I just wanted to thank staff for putting on a wonderful Earth Day event at the park. There was a lot of people. It was a beautiful day. You know, there was a lot of students out there. I saw students from Mount Eden, Tennyson, Hayward High, Chabot, Cal State. I mean, there was, and then of course all the volunteers and stuff. So I think, you know, for us to have a big impact in all of our neighborhoods across the city, it really takes everyone chipping in, and I think we certainly saw that on Saturday. So I just wanted to say thank you to the city manager, and of course I wanted to say thank you to our director of maintenance services, and of course Mr. Pearson, our environmental services manager. I always forget, that is his title, environmental services manager?
Correct.
Okay. So thank you, and of course his whole team. It was a really wonderful turnout, and it was a good day. So with that said, Councilmember Andrews.
Yes, I wanted to thank the Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force for
Of
their
course.
hard work on that, as well as hard. We just also want to report that for Councilmember Emmanuel that we planted 8 trees that day. So hopefully that helps with your count that you're tracking. Also wanted to let you know that there's an Equity and Anti-Racism and Education Resource Summit at Chabot College Event Center at 25555 Hesperian Boulevard from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's a free event for educators, students, and families, and it's put on by Hayward Unified, Chabot, and a couple of other folks. So, April 27th, so Saturday. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so no other questions. Move on to council referrals. There's no council referrals, and I'll move on to our adjournment. Today, we are adjourning in memory of a former council member here in the city of Hayward. Council member Shirley Campbell was a council member here in the city in the 90s, and along with other seats that she had sat in here within the Hayward and Hayward area. And I personally did not know Shirley Campbell, but I wanted to read her, read a write-up here that has been presented to me. Shirley J. Campbell, longtime resident of Hayward and active in Hayward and Bay Area Community Service, aged 92, passed away from complications related to Alzheimer's on April 10th. Shirley was born in San Francisco and raised in Dunsmuir, California, later receiving her BA in education from UC Berkeley. Educators do become council members. From UC Berkeley. She was predeceased by her loving husband, Roger, survived by her loving children, Dennis, Teresa, Ron, Cindy, and Sharon, and a grandmother of 7. Shirley served as a Hayward Area Recreation District Director from 1972 to 1980, and on the Hayward City Council from 1980 to 1992. She was also active in many other community service roles, including Hayward Council PTA, Project Eating Parents Against Drug Abuse, President, California Association of Recreation and Park Districts, Bay Area Air Quality Management District Director, BACMed, founding member of the HARD Foundation. Services will be held at Holy Sepulchre Funeral Cemetery at 1051 Harder Road in Hayward on Thursday, April 18th, It passed already. But donations in her memory may be made to the Hard Foundation. And, she was married, and longtime resident of Hayward, and again, she graduated from Dunsmuir and all of California public schools, had a degree from UC Berkeley, and then had a graduate degree, had a teaching credential in secondary education. And her community service resume here is, clearly she was involved, and in her community engagement legacy here in this city will always be remembered. And I am sure that we will be planting a tree in her memory, and I'm sure staff will be reaching out to the Campbell family. Thank you for your service, council member, and I'm sure you're going to be up there with other Hayward council members talking about city politics. But God bless you, and your memory will certainly live on here in the city of Hayward. And with that, meeting is adjourned.